What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 4TF Chapter 64 Nami's Logia ability, the Straw Hat Pirates greatly improved. This, after receiving the message from the Millennium Dragon, Ron was stunned for a moment. Transform into a dragon, dragon form, 1000-year dragon form. In addition, his own physique, speed, strength, defense and other all-round improvements. This 1000-year-old dragon said that he was given a divine body, but it turned out to be so miraculous. How could it turn him into a special physique? It was equivalent to eating one more zone devil fruit. Following this trend, he can even transform into a draconian or a dragon. Wouldn't this be zone? Most importantly, he also ate the Paramecia lightning fruit. Under such circumstances, he can fully display the power of the lightning fruit on the basis of becoming a dragon or even a dragon. Sharp. Isn't this double demon fruit power in disguise? Although it's not a serious double demon fruit power, this situation is not far different. At this moment, Ron was extremely excited. After all, when he came here, to be honest, his initial goal was just to evolve the famous sword and meet the 1000-year dragon. After all, there are many dragons in the world of One Piece. Most of them are Western dragons, but there are also very few 1000-year dragons. I never expected that there would be such words on it. Dragon soul. He still doesn't know where he got the dragon soul. But all this is no longer important. After all, the 1000-year dragon has died. Sacrificing himself to directly help him complete the undead dragon body will definitely make his strength improve by leaps and bounds. Especially after transforming into an undead dragon body, Ron's own potential has also been greatly enhanced. He can clearly feel that as long as he gives himself a period of time, he can reach the peak of the school level, and even there is a possibility of impacting the Commodore class. When he thought of this, the smile on Ron's face became even brighter. Ron, you wake up. At this time, Nami's surprised voice came. When she saw Ron standing up, Nami hurried forward and asked, "Are you okay? You have been in a coma for 3 months, and we are worried about you." What? I was in a coma for 3 months? Hearing this, Ron's expression changed. He never expected that he would be unconscious for so long after transforming into an undead dragon body. Although it was well worth the money, to be honest, he was still a little bit regretful that Luffy and others had waited for him here for so long. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, "Sorry, Nami, for making you worry. But this time it happened suddenly. I didn't expect it to be delayed for such a long time." "It's okay." In response, Nami smiled slightly and said happily, "We have been practicing hard in the past 3 months. Ron, my current strength cannot be underestimated." As he spoke, Nami raised his hands and clenched his fists in a show-off manner. Hearing this, Ron's eyes showed a hint of surprise. You know, because of his intervention, Nami did develop differently from the original work. Especially now that she has been practicing hard for 3 months, I am afraid that she may really take a different path from the one in the original work. Thinking of this, Ron asked curiously, "Oh, Name, what stage has your strength reached?" 3 months. Although your qualifications are not bad, you have missed a lot of time. Ensign level. Before Ron could finish speaking, Nami took the lead and said, "Ron, I have reached the level of ensign. According to what Luffy and Zoro said, I am now capable of fighting even those cadres of the buggy pirates." What? His pupils shrank, and Ron looked at Nami in disbelief. How is that possible? How could it have improved so much in just 3 months? At this moment, Ron was in disbelief. After all, Nami's qualifications are not bad, but she essentially doesn't have much fighting ability at all. Even if he had started exercising before going to Logue Town, he would not have reached this point in less than half a year. Smiling slightly, Nami winked playfully and said, "I'm lucky, I picked up a devil fruit. And it's a pretty awesome devil fruit." As he spoke, Nami stretched out his hand, and a cloud quietly gathered in his palm, then spread and covered the cave in a short time. His pupils shrank, Ron's breathing quickened. He stared at Nami's arms that were gradually turning into clouds, and said with envy, "Logia. Nami, you actually ate Logia devil fruit." At this moment, Ron felt like a lemon, AFJ. Although his lightning fruit is also very strong, although he now has similar double demon fruit power. But this is Logia. Although Logia fell from the altar in the later stages of One Piece, it was also because Logia's awakening was not truly revealed. Whether it is Paramecia's awakening or Zone's awakening, they are heaven-defying existences, and Logia's awakening cannot be a weak existence. If there had been a choice, even in the rubbish Logia, in Ron's opinion, it would still be stronger than Paramecia. "Good." Grinning, Nami said happily, "It's Logia Go-Go Shi. I picked it up when I went to the beach a month ago. I just wanted to try it, but I didn't expect it to be so magical." Hearing this, Ron became even more sour. Although his own luck is also very strong, Nami's luck is simply invincible. Logia devil fruit. This fruit is not weak, it is even the top fruit of tobacco season fruit. According to Ron's imagination, there are even more development directions for this Yanyan fruit, such as Layan, such as Huashaoyun. Once developed, lightning and fire will be able to be controlled. Coupled with the characteristics of the Yanyan fruit itself, and even the ability to fly, Nami can be said to have the potential to become an admiral-level powerhouse forever. Congratulations. After coming back to his senses, Ron congratulated Nami. Nami, I have some tips on developing such fruits for you. With that said, Ron told Nami the information that the cloud fruit can be developed into thunderclouds, fire clouds and other skills. Very good. After hearing Ron's ideas, Nami was overjoyed. After all, if it is developed in the direction Ron said, she will not only be able to transform into clouds, but also be able to control lightning, fire and other natural forces to attack. For a moment, Nami didn't care about anything else. She pulled Ron and walked towards the outside world, saying, "Let's go find Luffy and the others first. They'll be happy to know you're awake. It just so happens that I'm also trying out the development ideas you mentioned in the outside area." Ron didn't stop him and let Nami pull him out. Soon, they arrived outside the cave, and under the leadership of Nami, they found Luffy, Zoro, Sanji and Usopp who were practicing in the woods. Luffy. Zoro. Ron wakes up. As soon as they got close, Nami shouted happily. As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others who were practicing were all refreshed. Subconsciously, he looked at where Ron and Nami were. After confirming that Ron was awake, they all stopped practicing and disappeared immediately. Obviously, in 3 months, they have become more and more skilled in the practice of Marine 6 styles, especially this one, whose speed is not inferior to that of Marine of the same level. Ron, you finally woke up. Almost instantly, Luffy arrived in front of Ron and hugged Ron with a swoop. At the same time, Zoro and others came to his side and said with joy, "Great, Ron, you are finally awake. Ron, you scared us to death. You haven't woken up for so long. We are still worried that something happened to you. Yes, you have been unconscious for such a long time. If we hadn't made sure that your aura was stable, we would have planned to forcefully wake you up." Listening to the words of several people, Ron also had a smile on his face. This is what partners are. This is a companion. At this moment, Ron felt extremely relaxed. Especially the 1,000-year dragon's help this time, which directly made him equivalent to double demon fruit power. This greatly reduced Ron's eagerness, and the whole person no longer had the urgency and anxiety that he had before to become stronger. After a while, Ron and Luffy ended their hug, and then said, "How has everyone's strength improved during this period?" "Nami has made a huge improvement. You guys are not idle, are you?" As soon as these words came out, Luffy and Zoro looked confident, while Sanji and Usopp looked a little resentful and helpless. After all, Nami's luck is really outrageous. Rushing to the sea to pick up devil fruit, Logia became an opponent that none of them could defeat. Even if Luffy and Zoro are strong enough to suppress Nami, unless Nami is exhausted, they will be unable to do anything to the elementalized Nami. Thinking of this, Luffy spoke first. "That's natural. I have completely perfected the second gear, and even incorporated Marine 6 styles into it. Although this also resulted in me not being able to practice the secrets of Marine 6 styles, it also made my second gear more powerful. The most important thing is that ordinary swords have no effect on me now." With that said, Luffy carelessly pulled out Zoro's Snowwalker, then directly entered the second gear state. Under Ron's stunned eyes, he slashed his arm with a knife. Jung fire was flying, and just as Luffy said, the sword's damage to him was significantly reduced. Even a famous sword like Shueiji only left a white mark on his arm at this moment, and it quickly returned to its original state. Is this the result of integrating the iron body into itself? This is simply too strong. The passive iron body directly greatly increases the strength of Luffy's rubber, and even overcomes the weakness of its own fruit ability. Seeing this scene, Ron couldn't help but shrink his pupils. Although he had already deduced the reason why Luffy accomplished all this, he was still a little shocked in his heart. This is simply a weaker version of armament hockey. Moreover, Luffy integrated Marine 6 styles into the second gear, directly converting it from an active skill to a passive skill. This wave of operations is really a blinding rhythm. Hey, grinning, Luffy was extremely satisfied with what he had gained during this period. And that's just iron body. After the remaining Marine 6 style skills were integrated with the second gear, his strength was directly improved. I have also understood Zantetsu. At this time, Zoro on the side spoke quietly, staring at the bloody blade on Ron's waist and said, "Ron, I have reached the school level. And I feel that in a few more months, I will be able to completely master Jante and become a swordsman." "Hey, you said before that if I become a swordsman, you will give me that sword." Well, with a twitch in his mouth, Ron glanced at the bloody blade at his waist, and then said helplessly, "Okay. This knife has now evolved into a sharp knife, and it was the knife that ate devil fruit. It's just that what it ate was the Paramecia evolution fruit. Now its potential has been exhausted, and it can't continue to improve even if it absorbs new blood. If you encounter a better knife in the future, then replace it, but the current one can indeed replace the snow on your waist." Ron was very serious about what he agreed to do. Although the Bloodblade is good, even a powerful sword, but compared to companions like Zoro and his own commitment, Ron has nothing to give up. What? It's already a sharp knife. Hearing this, Zoro's breathing became even more rapid. He never expected that Ron would evolve the Bloodblade in such a short time after getting it. For a moment, Zoro said anxiously, "Then I will continue practicing now." After saying that, Without lingering any longer, Zoro turned around and hurried off to practice. Big sharp knife. That is a famous sword that is rare in the world. Now that he is his own as long as he becomes a swordsman, how could Zoro remain unmoved? As for Ron losing his knife, Zoro is not worried about that. After all, if he really wanted to replace him, then Shueiji could be given to Ron, and he remembered that Ron said that his goal was within the Grand Line, and he would definitely go all out to help him when the time comes. Seize the knife it needs. What about you? Seeing this, Ron smiled and shook his head. Then, he looked at Sanji and Usopp and asked, "We are still at the level of lieutenants." Looking at each other, Sanji and Usopp said helplessly. Immediately afterwards, Sanji said, "But my strength has reached around Lieutenant Junior grade, and I have completely mastered Tempest Kick and Shave, so Lieutenant cannot be my opponent." Seeing this situation, Usopp on the side also quickly said, "Ron, I have just been promoted to ensign level. However, I have become proficient in moonwalk and shaving, especially the paper arts you told me before. I have reached the point of success. I tried with Zoro before. With my sniper's vision and the cooperation of paper arts, Zoro couldn't defeat me in a short time." At this point, Usopp changed his voice and said, "By the way, where are you, Ron? You have been in a coma for the past 3 months. How are you doing now? What did the 1,000-year dragon do to you?" Chapter 65 Arrival at Upside Down Mountain, Obstacle in the Road Smoker. To be honest, Luffy and others were extremely curious at the moment. Even Zoro in the distance stopped moving. After all, everyone came out of curiosity to see the 1,000-year dragon this time. No one expected that so many stories would happen between the 1,000-year dragon and Ron, and even put Ron in a coma for 3 months. The most important thing is that they can also feel the aura exuding from Ron's body at this moment, which is completely unmatched 3 months ago. It's a long story. With a calm smile, Ron glanced at Luffy and others. Immediately afterwards, he didn't mean to hide it, and said directly, "This matter is actually a bit unbelievable. Even I can't believe it, but it is indeed the case. The 1,000-year-old dragon opened up a special physique for me." Special physique? What is that? Upon hearing this, Luffy and others looked at each other and did not understand Ron's words at all. Nami even asked directly, "What is a special constitution? Is it great? I actually made you coma for 3 months, and you seem to have become stronger?" As soon as these words came out, the eyes of Luffy and others focused on him again. In this regard, Ron explained calmly, "Special physique, this thing itself is different from ordinary people. For example, Luffy can recover from his injuries by drinking milk and eating meat. For example, Zoro can recover after being injured by just sleeping. These are all special physiques." What? There is such a thing? Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro were thoughtful, but Sanji, Usopp and Nami on the side also looked at Luffy and Zoro as if they were looking at monsters. After all, according to what Ron said, the special physiques of these two guys are indeed a bit exaggerated. Regardless of whether he drinks milk, eats meat, or takes a nap to recover, this is a complete monster to ordinary people. My special physique can be called a dragon body. After taking in the whole scene, Ron pondered for a moment and then said. He had reservations, not because he wanted to be wary of anything, nor because he didn't believe Luffy and others. It's that his undead dragon body is too complex and the risks he takes are too great. The previous person who claimed to be immortal was 4 Emperors Kaido. If he still has the ability to die, I am afraid that Marine's pursuit and encirclement of him will be even more intense. Thinking of this, Ron continued. The special thing about it is that it allows me to transform into a dragon like the Zone Demon Fruit power. After transforming into a dragon, my strength will be enhanced tenfold. Coupled with my own Devil Fruit ability, it feels like I have become a double Devil Fruit experiencer. What? Zone Demon Fruit power like animal transformation? Shang Shilu's combat effectiveness? Double Demon Fruit power? For a moment, Luffy and others were in an uproar. They were all stunned by Ron's words at this moment, and even felt curious from the bottom of their hearts. After all, whether it's animal transformation or dual demon fruit power, this is something they have never been exposed to or known. Ron, have you really become a double demon fruit power? On the contrary, Luffy asked hurriedly at this moment. I remember Grandpa said that you can't eat the second devil fruit, otherwise you will explode and die. How did you do it? What? Is there such a thing? Hearing this, Nami, Sanji and others, who had been excited just now, suddenly changed their expressions. If you eat the second devil fruit, you will explode and die. Isn't it impossible for 2 demon fruit powers to be born? Then Ron's situation is. No, waving his hand, Ron looked at Luffy helplessly and said, what you said is true, but I am not a double demon fruit power. The reason why I can transform into a dragon is because of my special physique, and because the Millennium Dragon helped me accomplish this at the cost of its own life. Although it is similar to the double demon fruit power, in fact, I only have the power of Paramecia shining fruit in my body. Let's put it this way, I am still a single fruit ability user, but I just have a physique comparable to Zone Devil Fruit. I see. After listening to Ron's explanation, Luffy suddenly understood. Then, he looked at Ron with envy in his eyes. It's so cool. Ron, you are almost a combination of Paramecia and Zone now. You are so handsome, so handsome. I also want to have one more kind of fruit ability, but it's a pity that the Millennium Dragon didn't choose me. As soon as these words came out, Sanji and others on the side also nodded. After all, according to Ron's story, the Thousand-Year Dragon's help was to create a devil fruit ability that had no side effects and was compatible with Ron out of thin air. It's a pity that the person chosen by the Millennium Dragon was Ron. If it were him, wouldn't he be able to become stronger quickly? The corners of his mouth twitched, and Ron looked at Luffy speechlessly. There is no problem with anyone saying this, including Blackbeard and Ron. After all, the dual fruit ability in this form is indeed shocking. But the person who said this was Luffy, and he couldn't help but complain. You are indeed a crotchless rubber fruit now, but as it awakens, it will be zone, human fruit, phantasmal beast species, and Nika form. The only super god devil fruit in the world of One Piece. It even carries the special fruit of Joey Boy's will 800 years ago. Once fully mastered, Luffy will truly stand on the top of the world. Thinking of this, Ron clapped his hands and said, Okay, I've finished my business. We've been delayed for so long, it's almost time to leave here. After all, the Lost Land is not the end. Our goal is the Grand Line, the New World, and even the final land of Raftel. As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others were immediately in awe. As Ron said, their adventure cannot stop here. Under the current circumstances, they have been stuck here for 3 months, and it is time to continue their journey. Asterisk. At this moment, there was a sound of stomach growling. Ron scratched his head awkwardly. After not eating or drinking for 3 months, even though I have the energy of a 1,000-year dragon to sustain me, I can't stand it now. At this moment, a sound of stomach growling resounded. Ron's stomach growl directly caused Luffy and others to become hungry too. After a moment of embarrassment, Sanji immediately said, I'll prepare the food. Good. Hearing this, Ron and others nodded. The next time, Ron and his group started eating and drinking. After they were full of wine and food, a group of people stopped, and after collecting some materials from the island, they left on the merry. As for the materials brought out by Logue Town, they have already been consumed within the past 3 months. After going to sea this time, most people also entered into intensive training. Especially Ron. After 3 months of deep sleep, he could be said to be full of energy at this moment. On the deck, he began practicing Marine 6 styles. Due to the improvement of his physique and Ron's current strength, the training of Marine 6 styles has become extremely difficult. In 3 days, he had practiced shaving to a great level. On the 4th day, I learned how to point a gun and mastered it skillfully. I learned Tempest Kick on the 5th day and mastered it skillfully. On the 6th day, I learned Iron Body and mastered it skillfully. On the 7th day, I learned Paper Arts and became proficient in it. Early on the 8th day, the boat that Ron and his group took had arrived at Upside Down Mountain. Wow, is this the Upside Down Mountain? Is that the legendary Red Line? It's so spectacular, there is actually water flowing backwards. For a moment, Luffy and others walked to the bow area of the ship. Looking at the backward flow of the Upside Down Mountain waterfall, everyone's eyes were filled with strong curiosity, surprise and expectation. But soon, everyone calmed down. Let's go, Grand Line. Following Luffy's order, the Merry entered the Upside Down Mountain directly. As the water flowed backwards, the boats they took were rising rapidly. It didn't take long for Ron and his team to successfully reach the area that reached the top of the mountain. On the way, we also saw the whale laboon that hit Red Line, but after the previous incident of the super large sea kings, they did not touch or disturb them rashly. Not long after, Ron and his team arrived at the top of Arlong's Upside Down Mountain on the Merry. Kill. However, just as the Merry stabilized, bursts of killing cries came from the distant area. Following the sound, you can see that in the distant area, a huge pirate ship and a marine warship are leaning together, and the two sides are fighting crazily at the moment. Zero, please give me flowers, marine? Warship? Seeing this scene, Ron frowned slightly. It's not just him. Including Luffy and others on the side were all frowning at this moment. If nothing else, they had dealt with marine a lot before, and almost all of them were marine scum. It's him. Smoke Man. Suddenly, Luffy seemed to notice something. He stared at Smoker speeding on the warship in the distance, and the fighting spirit in his eyes burst out at this moment. It's not just him. Even Zoro and Sanji on the side are full of fighting spirit at this moment. After all, when they were in Logue Town Square before, the pressure the latter put on them was extremely huge, and it could even be said to be despairing. After practicing for 3 months now, their strength has been greatly improved. Even if the opponent is Logia, they all want to fight against him again. It's actually them. Ron raised his eyebrows, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. But soon, Ron understood. Not surprisingly, this should be due to the butterfly effect. After all, because of themselves, the Straw Hat Pirates stayed in the Lost Land for 3 full months. Under such circumstances, Smoker and others should have entered the Grand Line long ago. But now they are still on Upside Down Mountain, which shows that Smoker must be blocking the progress of the Straw Hat Pirates. .0 ******. The purpose was to capture the Straw Hat Pirates here, but they also encountered another pirate group and were fighting with them at the moment. And looking at this posture, Smoker doesn't have much benefit at the moment, and even Marine's situation on the warship is not happy. View. For a moment, Ron focused his attention on the pirate ship. Although they were far apart, when he observed carefully, he still saw the figure among them, especially the blue-haired man who was in a difficult situation when he was besieged by several Marines in the bow area. Woman. Vivi. The moment he saw the woman, Ron recognized her origins. This person is actually the Princess of Alabasta, working undercover in the Baroque Company under Crocodile in order to save the country. In the original book, Vivi's identity was exposed and she escaped. Later she met people from the Straw Hat Pirates and Baroque works here, and then used the power of the Straw Hat Pirates to attack. Defeated Crocodile and truly saved Alabasta. Thinking of this, Ron suddenly said, Nami, speed up and move the boat closer. If nothing else, Smoker and others are blocking us here. Only by defeating them again can we enter the Grand Line. Furthermore, you are a person with such fruit abilities, and you are the superior fruit of his smoke fruit. I also want to see how strong the restraint between the fruit abilities is. Speaking of this, Ron's mind couldn't help but picture the scene where Ace was killed by a Kainu with one punch. It is simply outrageous that lava fruit is the superior fruit of Mera fruit. It is true that the temperature of a general flame is not as good as that of magma, but what if the temperature of the flame is high enough? For example, if it reaches the level of the fire of the sun, how can it be possible for a mere eye to be its opponent? How can it be restrained? Good. Hearing this, Nami also perked up and was extremely curious about the fruit restraint that Ron mentioned. Then, without hesitation, she quickly returned to the cockpit and let the Mary speed up. Interesting, has the person Shanks chosen finally shown up? At the same time, on a small island in the distance with an area of less than 20 square meters, a slovenly old man was looking at the advancing Mary with bright eyes, almost focusing on Luffy. No, it should be where the straw hat is gathered on Luffy's head, with a confused and complicated expression, a look of reminiscence on his face. But Ron and others didn't know all this. At this moment, they were approaching the marine warship on the Mary. It's the Straw Hat Pirates. The Straw Hat Pirates have appeared. Damn it, why did those guys from the Straw Hat Pirates show up at this time? As they approached, Marine on the warship also caused an uproar. The original fighting movements came to a halt, and even Smoker just knocked out the two people who were chasing Vivi and threw them aside. Marine tied him up, but his eyes were also focused. The Straw Hat Pirates were coming quickly. Chapter 66. Battle with Smoker and kill the members of the Baroque Working Society. Pirate Ron. Almost instantly, Smoker's eyes were locked on Ron. At this moment, he was furious, and his eyes were filled with strong anger and unwillingness. Thinking back to how high-spirited he was 3 months ago, he was known as the White Hunter in East Blue, and it would not be an exaggeration to say he was the nemesis of pirates. But with the encounter with the Straw Hat Pirates, all this was completely shattered, and he was defeated. He actually lost to a pirate whose bounty was less than 50 million belly, and even suffered a humiliating defeat that consumed all 50 million belly. This was a great shame for Smoker, who resigned on the spot and led his people to pursue the Straw Hat Pirates. But what he never expected was that the Straw Hat Pirates disappeared. This also led to the fact that there was no trace of the Straw Hat Pirates all the way to Upside Down Mountain. After asking around, he learned that the Straw Hat Pirates had not arrived here at all. For a moment, Smoker no longer planned to pursue, but chose to wait and see at the top of Upside Down Mountain, and also use this time to get some exercise. In the previous battle with Ron, he thought he was defeated due to lack of physical strength, which made him clearly aware of his own shortcomings. If he used to rely on Logia to act unscrupulously before, now he doesn't have any contempt for it. For 3 consecutive months, he exercised crazily day and night, and his strength and physique were greatly improved. Finally, he met the Straw Hat Pirates again today, and the man who brought him the shame of defeat. For a moment, Smoker threw the 10 hands into the sea without hesitation. It was this thing that led to his defeat last time, and this time he will not leave such a disaster behind. After doing all this, Smoker directly flew to Mary and said, Ron, today I am going to avenge my shame. Wait a moment. Seeing this, Ron frowned slightly. Although it was only for a moment, he could also see that Smoker's strength had improved, and the improvement was very large, definitely not less than the 3 months they stayed in the Lost Land. Because of this, Ron knew that once the battle started, things would become extremely troublesome, especially now that they were still above the sea. All of them have demon fruit power. If they fall into the sea, they will really be doomed. Especially the Mary. Once it is broken here, there will be no possibility for them to enter the Grand Line. Thinking of this, Ron suddenly said, Smoker, I know exactly what you want to do. Wasn't it just that you felt aggrieved in that battle? To be honest, I wasn't very satisfied with the ending, and it was just right for me to decide the outcome with you. But you and I both know very well that almost all of us are demon fruit power. Once the ship is destroyed, we will all die here. How about we enter the Grand Line and go directly to the nearest island to have a showdown? I can guarantee that the Straw Hat Pirates will not back down. The winner of this battle must be decided before the winner leaves. What do you think? As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others, who were at war with each other, and Marine on the opposite side also fell silent. Although I don't want to admit it, but Ron's words are indeed true. Now we are on the top of Upside Down Mountain, and the only land is the small island less than 30 square meters in the distance. If they really fell into the sea, there would be very few people who could survive. The most important thing is that Smoker and the Marines behind him are unwilling to give in. Not only was Smoker unwilling to lose to Ron, but the officers under his command were also dissatisfied that so many of them had been defeated by Luffy and Zoro. However, no one spoke. At this moment, they were all looking at Smoker in midair. After all, Ron's words have been spoken, and it is Smoker's choice whether to agree or not. You sure? What if I believe you will actually fulfill your promise? What if after entering the Grand Line, you just choose to escape? After pondering for a moment, Smoker did not choose to take the risk. As Ron said, they both have demon fruit power. When they are really in a fight, destroying the opponent's ships is one of the most effective methods. His smoke fruit has good destructive power, but it cannot destroy a ship instantly like Mera Mera fruit and Lava Lava fruit. In this way, once Luffy and others break into the warship and start killing, he will have no way, or even be able to stop them. Even if he can fly, it doesn't mean that he can survive safely with the hundreds of Marines under his command. Smoke Man, what nonsense are you talking about? Before Ron could speak, Luffy beside him couldn't bear it anymore and said angrily, I am a man who wants to become the Pirate King, how could I back down from a duel? Ron defeated you last time, I will defeat you this time too. Upon hearing this, Smoker smiled coldly. He already knew roughly Luffy's situation. He was also a demon fruit power, but he was just a garbage paramecia, posing no threat to him at all. Even though he still wanted to defeat himself, Smoker only felt that the latter was delusional. However, he could tell from Luffy's words that Ron and others would not back down. After all, Ron is just a crew member, but Luffy is also the captain. If they escape at this time, their reputation will be completely ruined and they will not be able to continue to hang out. Thinking of this, Smoker nodded and said, okay. That's how it went. The nearest land ahead is Whiskey Peak, let's go directly there for a duel. It's done. Hearing this, Ron breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't want to fight Smoker here, but it was different on land. Without the threat of seawater, their safety factor is very high. As for winning, although the strength of Smoker and others have also been greatly improved, Ron has never doubted the combat effectiveness of the Straw Hat Pirates. The most important thing is that they have no food on the ship. The food brought out by the Lost Land has been eaten up long ago, and now their condition is not very good. Once there is a large-scale duel, even if you win, it will be extremely troublesome. Without food supplements and without knowing where Whiskey Peak is, dangers and problems can easily arise. Thinking of this, Ron said, in that case, Marine, please lead the way. We will follow you on the ship to Whiskey Peak. Nodding, Smoker then said calmly, but I don't believe you. So, you Ron are going to work with me on the warship. Of course, I will also let my people enter your pirate ship, what do you think? Although he was sure that Luffy and others would not escape, Smoker did not want any accidents to happen. No problem. After a brief pause, Ron knew what Smoker meant. Basically, it is a means of exchanging hostages to ensure that the Straw Hat Pirates will not escape early. However, he had never had such thoughts, and immediately agreed. Then who do you plan to let come? Colonel Smoker. Before Smoker could answer, Tashigi shouted from the warship in the distance. I am willing to join the pirate group and move forward with them. Good. Seeing Tashigi coming forward, Smoker nodded with satisfaction. Then, he stopped talking nonsense and waved his hand. Let's go, Ron. Ron did not refuse. He turned to look at Luffy and the others and said, let's go too. This time is a test for us to be in seclusion for so long. Good. Hearing this, Luffy and others also nodded. They are all extremely satisfied with their efforts over the past 3 months, and are eager to find out how far their strength has improved. Especially Nami. After eating the Logia devil fruit, she also wanted to know that she could exert such power now. Immediately afterwards, the Mary approached the warship. As Ron entered the warship, Tashigi also stepped into the Mary. Colonel Smoker, what should we do with these guys? At this time, a Marine came forward and stood beside Smoker, pointing at Vivi and others who had been captured on the ground not far away and asked. Imprison him and send him to impel down after the duel. With a cold snort, Smoker looked at Vivi and others not far away, their eyes full of hostility. After all, this is Marine, and he hates pirates extremely. The reason why it is so easy to talk to the Straw Hat Pirates is that the Straw Hat Pirates have enough strength, and his main purpose is to wash away the previous shame. Smoker, I advise you to kill them. Seeing this, Ron raised the corner of his mouth and said with a playful look. I remember that the world government and Marine have an agreement. The Shichibukai are legal pirates, right? What do you mean? Hearing this, Smoker frowned and turned to look at Ron. Not only him, but also the Marines on the side looked at Ron with expressions full of confusion. Aren't these weak guys in front of me related to Shichibukai? Literal meaning. Shrugging, Ron pointed to Vivi and others in front of him who were looking at him with pale faces. They're people under Shichibukai crocodile. You send it to impel down, and I can guarantee that they will come out of it in less than 3 days. You haven't even sent it impel down yet, I'm afraid you have to send it to Crocodile. Click. With his fists clenched, Smoker looked at Vivi and others with murderous eyes. Shichibukai. These guys are actually Shichibukai's subordinates. If this is really given away, it will really be like what Ron said. After all, he is Zephyr's disciple, does he know what Shichibukai means? Because of this, as a marine who pursues justice, the murderous intention in his heart becomes more intense. No, don't kill me, I am not from Crocodile, I am the Princess of Alabasta. Seeing Smoker's murderous intent, Vivi glared at Ron with hatred, and then had to choose to reveal her identity. Joke. If she was taken as one of Crocodile's gang, she would probably be killed for real. Alabasta. World franchise. His face darkened, and Smoker became even more angry now. She is the princess of a world franchise country, and she actually hangs out with pirates. This is simply not doing her job properly. But now that Vivi's identity is exposed, Smoker can't really do anything to her, otherwise he won't be able to bear the consequences. Kill these two pirates for me. With a cold snort, Smoker pointed at Crocodile's subordinate who was tied up not far away. Then, he looked at Vivi and said, just untie Princess Vivi and make sure it's safe. Yes. Yes. Hearing this, Marine under Smoker also breathed a sigh of relief. They were also afraid that if they really sent these two people back, they would probably encounter a lot of trouble. But now Smoker is going to kill the crocodile, and that's good news. As long as the two of them are dead, then there will be no proof. Even if Naval Headquarters pursues it, they can pretend that they don't know anything and just define it. A subordinate to pirates, not Shichibukai. What are you going to do? We are Lord Crocodile's subordinates, you can't kill me. We are the crew of Shichibukai, we are 1.1 legal pirates, you can't do this. At the same time, the two members of the Baroque working group on the ground were frightened. They never expected that Smoker would actually dare to do this, which made them sweat. Unfortunately, reality is also cruel. Before they even had time to say anything, the two lieutenants chopped off their heads and kicked their bodies into the sea without hesitation to feed the fish. After doing all this, they untied Vivi and then returned to the nearby area. At this point, Vivi breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, my identity prevents these Marines from acting rashly, otherwise the consequences will be disastrous. But right after, Vivi was also furious, staring at Ron, walked up and said angrily, "Hey, who are you? Do you know you almost killed me just now?" Smoker and others had a panoramic view of this scene, and their inner evaluation of Vivi was lower, but they turned their heads away and looked like they were out of sight and out of mind. So what? Hearing this, Ron disagreed. After casting a glance at Vivi, he said calmly, "I don't think it's a good thing for a king's daughter to mix with people from Shichibukai. I just heard them say that you are still the princess of a member country in the world. This makes me even less sensitive to you. You should be lucky that you were caught by Marine. If you were caught by me, no matter who you are, you would be dead just now. A group of royal families who are immovable and suffer from hardship. They are born as human beings. Not everyone is your slave and needs to obey your thoughts and will." Chapter 67 Arriving at Whiskey Peak and killing Ikaram. To be honest, Ron admires Vivi's starting point. After all, as a royal daughter, she was indeed taking a huge risk by joining the Baroque working group in order to change Alabasta's situation. For making such a choice, Vivi is indeed an admirable existence. But this kind of admiration is not too great, because he knows very well that Vivi made such a choice based on her own interests. The most important thing is that the current Vivi does not have the sense of responsibility as a princess. Although the Straw Hat Pirates in the original book helped Vivi regain Alabasta and defeated Crocodile. But essentially, this matter was exploited by Vivi from the beginning. For a pirate group that has just entered the Grand Line, if they want to deal with Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai, they will almost die. After all, the bounty of the Straw Hat Pirates in the original work was only tens of millions, and it did not reach the level of over 100 million at all. If it weren't for the configuration of all the protagonists of the Straw Hat Pirates, how could it be possible to defeat Crocodile in a natural place like the desert? To be honest, Ron felt that all of this was just plot killing. It's not that Crocodile is so powerful at this stage, but because in a desert full of yellow sand, it can destroy elementalization with just water and blood. This is simply nonsense. Rather than saying that Crocodile lost to the Straw Hat Pirates, it would be better to say that he lost to the protagonist Halo. Therefore, if the Straw Hat Pirates are not the protagonist group, they will definitely die when facing Crocodile. And Vivi, who has taken advantage of all this, will not be in any serious trouble herself, because she has successfully lured Marine to Alabasta and let Marine know what happened. Even if Shichibukai is recognized by the world government, Alabasta is a member country, and Marine cannot remain unmoved after knowing the situation. Crocodile's defeat and arrest are inevitable. The most important thing is that a down-and-out princess is actually yelling at him. Ron's sense of her is naturally even worse, and he has no intention of taking the initiative to get close to her. "05" opening her mouth, Vivi glared at Ron, wanting to cut him into pieces. Even Marine, a majestic princess, must be respectful to her. How could he, a mere pirate, be so arrogant? Subconsciously, she couldn't help but recall what happened in Alabasta. In the same situation, Their royal family was also dominated by Crocodile and had no power to resist. Asshole! I'll destroy you. In a rage, Vivi walked up and kicked Ron towards him. Get out! Seeing this, Ron swerved to avoid Vivi's attack. Immediately afterwards, he raised his hand and slapped him without hesitation. Snapped, there was a loud slap, and Vivi was knocked to the ground, and her cheeks became red and swollen. You dare to hit me? At this moment, Vivi was stunned and looked at Ron in disbelief, unable to believe that he was so bold. Immediately afterwards, the princess's explosive temper made Vivi completely furious. She pointed at Ron and gritted her teeth and said, Damn guy, you dare to hit me, I want you to die. I'm going to arrest you, and I'm going to throw you into prison for the rest of your life. Immediately afterwards, she turned to look aside and said, Marine, what are you doing? Didn't you see that I was beaten? I am the princess of Alabasta, and I am the princess of a country that joins the world government. Are you just looking at me like this? If you don't hurry up and arrest this guy, I want him to pay the price for his actions. However, no one paid attention to her words. Even Smoker just pretended not to hear or see. It's not that they really turn a blind eye to Ron's behavior, but they are honestly disdainful of Vivi's existence. Although Ron's words are a bit far-fetched, that's the fact. The dignified princess actually got together with the pirates, and even became so arrogant and domineering. This was simply asking for death. As for Ron hitting Vivi, to be honest, it has nothing to do with them. If it weren't for Vivi's special identity, they would have just treated her as a pirate and got rid of her. You guys, at this moment, Vivi was dumbfounded. She wasn't an idiot, she couldn't tell that these Marines didn't care about her at all. At this moment, her heart was full of bitterness and unwillingness. She knew that Marine was extremely repelled by her situation. She was extremely clear in her heart about what this meant and what it meant. For a moment, she was filled with regret. If she had known this, she would never have joined Baroque Works. If she had found Marine directly, she might have been able to use Marine's power to save Alabasta. Someone, send Princess Vivi to the cabin to rest. Seeing that Vivi was not making a fuss, Smoker was not talking nonsense at the moment and gave orders with a wave of his hand. Yes. Hearing this, the two female Marines stepped forward. He directly lifted up the distraught Vivi from left to right and walked towards the cabin area. And as Vivi left, the deck fell into dead silence. Ron didn't speak, and it was impossible for Smoker and the others to have anything to say to the pirates. For a time, the warship and the melee drifted away. Interesting. Looking at this scene, the old man on the island was a little surprised at the moment. I thought it would be a fierce battle, but I didn't expect it to turn out like this. But soon, he seemed to have thought of something, and took out a phone from his arms and dialed the channel. The person selected by Shanks has entered the Grand Line. But now they have a fight with Marine and are on their way to Whiskey Peak. I don't know how it will turn out, but it seems like a good start. Whiskey Peak. Ron and his party successfully arrived on the warship in the Mary. As they arrived, snow began to fall throughout the Whiskey Peak area. Under such circumstances, Ron, Smoker and other Marines stepped off the warship. Luffy and others at the other end also walked off the boat with Tashigi. Alright. We've arrived. After successfully logging in, Smoker looked at Ron with bright eyes and said, It's almost time to start. As soon as these words came out, the Marine next to him suddenly became murderous, and everyone looked at Ron with eyes filled with anger and murderous intent. After all, after enduring for so long, they were all impatient. Not urgent. In response, Ron waved his hand indifferently, looked at Smoker and said, We have been traveling for so many days, and you don't have much food to eat. Why don't we let people buy food first, and then we'll have a showdown after we're full? After all, everyone is in the same situation now. If they don't return to their peak, the outcome of the battle won't be of much significance. On the contrary, if you lose then, you might think it's because of your own hunger. Hearing this, Smoker glared at Ron. Do you hear this being said by a human? This is obviously a mockery of the previous failures of myself and others. But anger was anger, and Smoker knew that was the case. The Straw Hat Pirates don't have much material, so why don't they? After staying in the Upside Down Mountain for 3 months, they had already eaten up all the supplies they had been slacking on. In addition to fishing, they could only obtain some supplies by catching those pirate groups. In the current situation, they and the Straw Hat Pirates are almost in a weak state. Good. After pondering for a while, Zoog said, There is no need to lose your people. I directly asked Marine's people to deliver the food here. No one from either side of us is allowed to leave this sea area until the winner is decided. Good. In response, Ron nodded and did not refuse. He knew what Smoker meant. He was afraid that they would run away. But Ron has never had such thoughts. Before, he was afraid of starting a battle on the sea, but now he wants to let Luffy and others regain their full strength. Otherwise, it would still be very difficult for the Straw Hat Pirates to face the siege in their weak state. Then I'll go there first. Thinking of this, Ron didn't hesitate, turned around and walked towards the Straw Hat Pirates. Colonel Smoker, is this really necessary? Seeing this situation, a Marine captain stepped forward and asked, The situation of the Straw Hat Pirates is worse than ours, what if? Enough. However, before he could finish speaking, Smoker was the first to interrupt and said, "Didn't you hear that guy Ron's weird and sarcastic tone just now? This is a conspiracy. If we, as Marines, take advantage of someone's danger and arrest him and spread the word, what will happen to our face? Especially when we are still defeated in Logue Town. Once we do this, we really can't hold our heads high." "Yes. My subordinate made a mistake." Hearing this, Captain Marine immediately lowered his head. Not only him, but also Marine behind him, as Smoker said. They are the losers, and now is their chance to avenge their past humiliation. Because of this, what they need to do is to defeat the Straw Hat Pirates in an upright manner instead of taking advantage of others' danger, otherwise it will be difficult for them to wash away their previous shame. "Alright." After waving his hand, Smoker said calmly, "Contact the mayor of Whiskey Peak and ask him to send food. After we finish eating, it's time for us to avenge our shame." "Yes." Hearing this, Captain Marine did not dare to neglect, quickly walked aside and took out the phone bug to start contacting. On the other side, Ron has also returned to the Straw Hat Pirates. And his return also resulted in Tashigi not staying around. After saying goodbye to Luffy and others, he hurried towards Marine's camp. "Ron, do you want to start now?" After Tashigi left, Luffy and others also stepped forward and asked. At this moment, they are also full of fighting spirit. After all, apart from Marine, they were also very dissatisfied with the battle in Logue Town. "Not urgent." With a calm smile, Ron looked at Luffy and the others and said, "I've already made an agreement with Smoker. He will ask people to send food, and we will start the war after we both recover. After all, everyone's consumption is not small, and they themselves have not reached their peak state." "Is that so?" Luffy and others also lost their fighting spirit. Being able to have a full meal before the war is something they're willing to accept. In this situation, about an hour later, a large number of townspeople came 087 to the coastline area. "Hello everyone, I am Ikaram, the mayor of Whiskey Peak." At this time, a curly-haired man strutted into the area between Marine, Ron and others. Looking at the scattered things, his eyes wandered and he noticed Vivi's existence at the first moment. For a moment, Ikaram's eyes flashed with murderous intent, but he quickly restrained himself and said, "I have delivered the food as ordered. I don't know who will pay the bill." "Tashigi, throw Bailey away." Seeing this, Smoker waved his hand and ate big mouthfuls of food. "Yes." Colonel Smoker, after agreeing, Tashigi didn't care about eating anymore, picked up the Bailey beside him and walked forward. "I'll go." Seeing this, Nami also stood up and prepared for Bailey to give money. "After all, these things are sent to you for real, but they are not free either." "No need, Nami, just keep eating." Seeing this, Ron smiled lightly, took Bailey in his hand and said, "I'm going to meet this guy." At this point, Ron's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Ikaram. This guy is also a member of Baroque Works and one of the people working for Shichibukai. The most important thing is that not only Ikaram, but also the surrounding townspeople, should also be under his command. After that, they will have a duel with Marine, and Ron doesn't want this group of people to follow him. "Here you go, here's our Marine's money to buy food." At this time, Tashigi had already walked to Ikaram's side, handed out the prepared Bailey and said, "Thank you for your help." Easy to say, laughing, Ikaram looked friendly at the moment, but his eyes kept scanning Marine and the Straw Hat Pirates. He already knew the general situation. This group of Marines and the Straw Hat Pirates have agreed to duel here. No matter what the outcome is, once both sides suffer, then your chance will come. Especially the Straw Hat Pirates. That is a team of 3 supernovas. If they are captured by then, Ron, Luffy and Zoro alone will have a bounty of more than 500 million Baileys, not to mention the Sanji, Usopp and Nami. Of course, the main thing is Vivi. He has already recognized the latter as a member of the Baroque Working Society, and he knows even more clearly that she is the Princess Vivi, who is a wanted criminal by the Baroque Working Society. If he can bring her back by then. If you go, then. No need to read. Before Ikaram could recover, Ron's figure had already arrived beside him. The bloody blade in his hand pierced his heart without hesitation, and said calmly, "Baroque. Ikaram, a member of the working club, am I right?" Chapter 68. Luffy fights Smoker again. Nami burns Marine. Seeing this, Tashigi was dumbfounded. I couldn't believe that Ron actually killed Ikaram with one knife, and it was not difficult to tell from his words that the latter seemed to be a member of the Baroque Working Society. "Hey, what are you doing?" At the same time, Smoker and others were also angry. Seeing Ron's behavior, everyone said angrily, "Ron, how dare you kill innocent people indiscriminately? Ron, you are looking for death, pirate, you have gone too far." Hearing this, Ron was extremely indifferent, glanced at Tashigi beside him and said, "Go ahead, I've already dealt with this guy. When Smoker takes care of the rest, those guys are also members of Baroque Works. If we don't deal with it, we will probably be missed by them after the duel." Oh. Recovering from a dream, Tashigi agreed and quickly retreated to Smoker's side. Looking at the Marines who were about to move, Tashigi quickly said, "Colonel Smoker, Ron said these guys are all from Baroque Works, let us." "What? People from Baroque Works?" The pupils shrank, and murderous intent suddenly appeared on Smoker's face. If this is true, doesn't it mean that these guys are subordinates of Shichibukai? Thinking of this, Smoker accelerated suddenly and grabbed one person's neck, saying coldly, "Are you from Baroque Works? How do you know?" The man's face turned red when he was choked, but the look he looked at Smoker was also extremely shocked. Really, after getting the answer he needed, the killing intent surged out of Smoker's eyes. He knew why Ron wanted to kill someone. Since they are Shichibukai's subordinates, this group of people will definitely become a threat to them. Once they really fight, they will go all out. Even if they win, they will pay a high price. If we are attacked by this group of guys who are eager to watch, the losses will be huge. Thinking of this, Smoker suddenly said, "Human, arrest all the guys from the surrounding Baroque Works. Anyone who dares to disobey will be killed without mercy." "Yes, yes." Hearing this, Marine on the side quickly responded. Immediately afterwards, they did not hesitate and quickly moved towards arresting those people on the side. "Luffy, Zoro, kill those guys. They're members of the Baroque Company, limited and subordinates of Shichibukai. We cannot let them be here." At the same time, Ron was also shouting towards Luffy and others not far away. Oh well. Hearing this, Luffy and others also came to their senses. Although he was a little surprised, he started to act without any hesitation at this moment. In an instant, the employees of Baroque Works in the venue began to flee in panic. But it was obvious that under the siege of the Straw Hat Pirates and Marine, they had no resistance at all, and each one of them was either captured or killed directly. Very good. Seeing this, Ron also raised the corner of his mouth. He turned to look at Ikaram, who was killed by him, and murmured, "That's almost it. Without his existence, Vivi will have no choice." Ron knew very well that in addition to being a member of the Baroque Working Society, the Ikarim in front of him was also Vivi's secret guard, in order to protect Vivi's safety in the Baroque Working Society. There is also a record about him in the original book, and he indeed accomplished the task of protecting Vivi very well, but as a member of the Baroque Working Group, his ruthlessness is unquestionable. Ikarim. At this time, Vivi's urgent cry came. It can be seen that he has woken up at this moment and is running towards this place in a hurry without caring about his own embarrassment. After arriving at the area on the field, he pounced directly on the area next to Ikaram. Unfortunately, what was waiting for her was a cold corpse. At this moment, Ikaram has been killed by Ron, and there is absolutely no possibility of survival. For a moment, Vivi was in despair. Died, his guard died like this. And it wasn't the people from Baroque Works who killed him, but Ron in front of him. A wave of resentment surged out. Vivi raised her head and glared at Ron and said, "Chaos, you killed Ikaram, I will definitely kill you." "Yeah?" Hearing this, Ron glanced at Vivi disdainfully and said calmly, "Just you?" "You." Ron's eyes deeply irritated Vivi, leaving her stunned for a moment not knowing how to answer. With this scene in full view, Ron raised the corners of his mouth, turned around and walked towards the Straw Hat Pirates without paying any attention. He didn't really want to be hostile to Alabasta, but he wanted to figure something out. That is Vivi's true psychology. Is she as kind as in the original work, or is it just a disguise? Someone, take Princess Vivi back to the warship and protect her. At the same time, Smoker also noticed Vivi's situation. A trace of dissatisfaction and anger flashed in his eyes, and with a wave of his hand, Marine was told to take Vivi away. Although I don't know the specific situation, judging from the current situation, Vivi, as the Princess of Alabasta, has such a close relationship with the people of Baroque Works, which can't help but make people wonder. But after all, she is the princess of a World Alliance country. No matter how bad it is, or even colludes with Shichibukai, as a Marine, he can't do anything to her. Yes. Yes. Hearing this, the two female Marines immediately stepped forward. He took Vivi directly towards the warship, regardless of her yelling and clamoring to take Ikaram's body with her. "Ron, why did you do this?" At the same time, as Ron returned, Nami and others in the team asked curiously. The rest was fine, but Ron was so decisive in killing now, which was completely unexpected. And they could also see that the relationship between Ikaram and Vivi seemed unusual. "No reason." Smile calmly. Ron looked at Luffy and others and said, "I just want to prevent others from being left behind. After all, in 3 months, the strength of Smoker and others will also be improved. We cannot be careless. As for that guy knowing Vivi, so what, do you think it's a good thing for a princess to hang out with pirates?" Hearing this, Luffy and others fell silent. Indeed. The most important thing now is the battle safety issue between them and Smoker and others. If we don't deal with those people in the Baroque Working Group well, I'm afraid someone will take advantage of them. Thinking of this, Luffy and others stopped asking, picked up the food and handed it to Ron. "Here, Ron, eat." "Good." With a laugh, Ron took the food and ate it without hesitation. Half an hour later, Ron and others finished the food. Smoker and others opposite have also finished their meals. After completely recovering their physical strength, both sides began to become tense. "Ron, come on." Smoker stepped forward and looked at Ron with piercing eyes, full of fighting spirit. "Good." Hearing this, Ron also stepped forward and prepared to take action. Wait a moment. However, at this moment, Luffy took the lead to step forward, blocking Ron and saying, "Ron, let me do it. I'm going to defeat him. Having said this, Luffy's face was solemn, and he obviously made up his mind. Good. In response, Ron nodded and did not insist. He also knows what Luffy is thinking. As the captain, Luffy wants to defeat Smoker himself to protect his crew. Instead of defeating Smoker with the help of Ron and others, let the crew protect themselves. Great. With Ron's permission, Luffy was extremely happy at the moment. Without any hesitation, he jumped directly to the area in front of Smoker and said, "Smokeman, your opponent is me." Straw Hat. Seeing this, Smoker frowned. His expression was not very good. "I am defeated. You are no match for me. Let Ron do it." Not always. Luffy was also solemn about this, raised his hand and made a fist and said, "Second block." In an instant, smoke appeared, Luffy's skin turned red, and his whole body went into second gear. Without hesitation, he suddenly jumped out to the area in front of Smoker, and smashed his fist into Smoker's face. So fast. Seeing this, Smoker's pupils shrank. He didn't expect that after 3 months, Luffy would suddenly become so much stronger. Seeing the attacking fist, he elementalized immediately. Bang! As Smoker's head exploded and the smoke emerged, his figure appeared next to Luffy and said, "Straw Hat Boy, I have to say that I underestimated you. In 3 months, you have made great progress, but it's not just you who have made great progress, I haven't been idle either." While speaking, Smoker kicked out, and the blade-like storm directly covered Luffy. Tempest Kick. Jung fires flew everywhere, and Luffy was affected by the Tempest Kick, with countless sparks flying all over his body. Even though he had the Iron Body passive, he was still knocked away under such an attack. Good guy. Smoker has trained Marine 6 styles. Seeing this situation, Ron's face darkened and he looked a little solemn. He knew that Smoker would definitely improve in 3 months, but he did not expect that the latter would make up for his shortcomings and flaws so quickly. The proficiency of Marine 6 styles, which is even close to mastery, combined with the Logia Devil Fruit, directly makes Smoker extremely difficult to deal with at this moment. Even an ordinary Commodore class can't do anything to him. Thinking of this, Ron said, "The situation is not good, it will be very difficult to win with Luffy's situation." As soon as these words came out, Zoro and others on the side also nodded. They all could see the seriousness of the matter, and Smoker had obviously become more powerful than when he was in Logue Town. "Zoro, let's do it again." At this time, Tashigi and others had also arrived in front of Ron and others. Immediately afterwards, Tashigi stared at Zoro with his eyes fixed on him, and his own fighting spirit was extremely strong. Good. Hearing this, Zoro did not refuse. As soon as his mind moved, he took out his 3 knives and said immediately, "Let's go aside." After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the side area. Although it is overkill to deal with Tashigi alone, Zoro also believes that Ron and others are enough to deal with it. And Tashigi didn't refuse, he just stepped forward and followed him. Go together. Capture the Straw Hat Pirates. As the two left, the remaining Marines didn't waste any time, and all of them came straight towards Ron and the others with weapons in hand. "Ron, leave it to us. Ron, don't take action yet." Seeing this situation, Sanji, Usopp and Nami were also ready to take action. With a shout, Sanji took the lead and jumped out directly into the crowd. Usopp was sniping from the rear, and the most outstanding person was undoubtedly Nami. As the battle started, she directly summoned countless clouds to wrap around and cover people, and then the clouds turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. The development of Huashaoyun is completed. As the flames shot into the sky, all the Marines covered by the fire cloud were burned by the fire. Ah, it's demon fruit power. Damn, that's Logia's power. For a moment, Marine present was in an uproar. With Nami's move, more than half of the Marines were burned by flames. Even within 3 months, Smoker required rigorous training and he was greatly improved. But in the face of the flames of Logia, for money, they couldn't hold on. Fortunately, the area next to us is the sea. Although they felt uncomfortable, they extinguished the flames after jumping into the sea. What followed was almost a one-man show by Nami. Sanji and Usopp protected Nami one after another, while Nami controlled the power of such fruits to continuously attack those Marines. In an instant, endless flames bloomed, and Marine's collective defeat became a fact. How so? This scene made Smoker couldn't help but look sideways. After seeing that it only took Nami to defeat all the Marines under his command, his face became extremely ugly. The most important thing is that the fruit ability displayed by Nami is obviously the power of his own smoke fruit, Logia Weiwei fruit. At this moment, he was shocked and angry inside. He gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, she is actually Logia. Straw Hat, where did you get the Logia devil fruit?" Smoker was speechless. "I thought it was just a small transparent existence, but I didn't expect Nami to give such a huge shock." "Hey," Nami picked it up from the beach. Grinning, Luffy was filled with joy at the moment. After all, Nami's strength is indeed terrifying. Although it is only at the level of ensign, with Logia's power, even the school-level experts cannot do anything to her, and they are not even her opponent. Of course, if this group of people breaks through to Nami's side, there is still a glimmer of hope, but with Sanji's obstruction and Usopp's sniper, they have no chance of even getting close to Nami. Even Ron didn't need to take action, but the defeat of these more than 100 Marines was already determined at this moment. Picked it up, The corner of his mouth twitched, and Smoker felt that his whole body was not well. This is Logia Devil Fruit. When did it become so easy to obtain? Chapter 69. Guiding Tashigi, Luffy's cool moves. At this moment, Smoker's heart collapsed. After all, no one expected that a Logia demon fruit power would appear in the Straw Hat Pirates. The most important thing is that this Logia is the superior fruit of his own smoke fruit, which is simply heart-wrenching. Yan Nan, don't be distracted, your opponent is me. At this time, Luffy's voice sounded again, bringing Smoker's thoughts back to reality. Immediately afterwards, Luffy's fist attacked him. For a moment, Smoker didn't care what he was shocked about. After quickly avoiding the attack by elementalization, he turned around and attacked Luffy without hesitation. In an instant, the two figures fought together. However, as the battle continued, Luffy gradually began to fall below. At this moment, Smoker is no longer the being who focused on Devil Fruit's ability 3 months ago. Marine 6 Styles is close to the level of Dachung. Coupled with his own strong strength and Logia's ability, Rao has integrated Marine 6 Styles into the second generation. Luffy, who was in the block, was also a little unable to resist. Amazing. Is this also the power of Logia Devil Fruit? On the other side, the fight between Tashigi and Zoro continued, but at this moment, she looked at Nami with some surprise. Even though Nami's strength is not high yet, with the power of this Logia, it is enough to control the range of the captain level. In particular, the Yin fruit itself is not weak, and the fire cloud was developed at Ron's suggestion, which directly caused Nami's destructive power to soar significantly. It may not be as good as the fire-based Mara fruit, but with the combination of clouds and flames, the flames can also cause explosions, and their power has reached the forefront of Logia Devil Fruit. Good. It's Logia indeed. When asked, Zoro replied calmly. But we are swordsmen, and Devil Fruit does not have much value or significance to us. Yeah? Hearing this, Tashigi is complicated. To be honest, she also knew very well that it was best for swordsmen not to eat Devil Fruit. But after this period of practice, she is also very aware of her own weaknesses and flaws. It can be said that the gap between girls and men is indeed obvious. Regardless of whether it is Big Mom or Momousagi, they are not just ordinary people in essence, but women of a special race. Only then can they become great swordsmen or even top powerhouses. But Tashigi is also an ordinary person, without any special physique or bloodline. Because of this, she clearly felt that her limits seemed to be blocked during these 3 months. Subconsciously, Tashigi said, but if you can eat the powerful devil fruit, you should be able to change the woman's own weaknesses and flaws. Hearing this, Zoro fell silent. He knew the meaning of Tashigi's words. But soon, he calmed down, looked at Nami not far away, and said, it's true. Nami has almost never practiced before, and his ultimate may even be at the ensign level. But after eating the Logia Devil Fruit, I immediately reached the current level and became stronger quickly. But if you want to eat it, I suggest Paramecia or the powerful zone. Having said this, Zoro hesitated for a moment, then raised his head and said, but I can't give an accurate judgment. It's better to ask Ron about this matter. He still knows Devil Fruit very well. Saying that, Zoro didn't hesitate. He tightened the knife in his hand and sped out. Santo Ryu hyphenation point climbed the stairs. The next second, the sword flashed brightly, and before Tashigi could even react, Zoro's sword was already on her neck. You lose. No harm to Tashigi, Zoro said complexly. Yeah, I lost. Tashigi was not upset about this, but smiled in relief, raised his head and looked at Zoro and said, then you have to work hard. I hope you can fulfill your dream and become the world's greatest swordsman. I will. Nodding, Zoro also looked at Tashigi seriously and said, I will reach the top of the world with my childhood friend's dream and become the world's greatest swordsman. After saying that, Zoro sheathed the sword and walked directly towards Ron with Tashigi. Ron. Soon, the two came to Ron's side, and Zoro asked, if you are a female swordsman, what type of devil fruit is better to eat? With a raised brow, Ron looked at Zoro in surprise. I really didn't expect that he would ask such a question. But after seeing Tashigi behind Zoro, Ron was relieved. At the same time, Ron raised the corner of his mouth and said, if you are a female swordsman with excellent swordsmanship, then I suggest eating zone. But zone is also divided into several types, ordinary species, ancient species and fantasy beast species. The common species among them are almost all garbage, don't choose to eat them unless you have to. The phantom beast species is the strongest zone devil fruit, even rarer and rarer than the Logia devil fruit. But I don't recommend her to eat devil fruit from the phantom beast species. Why? Hearing this, Zoro and Tashigi were both stunned and asked in confusion. After all, Ron had just said the zone, the phantom beast species, was the strongest, even surpassing Logia. In this case, why not choose to eat phantom beast species? Even if there is little hope, it is logically impossible to be treated like this. Because it doesn't fit. With a calm smile, Ron looked at Tashigi and said, female swordsman, her swordsmanship talent must be good, and she should stick to swordsmanship instead of devil fruit ability. Speaking of this, Ron couldn't help but feel filled with emotion. To be honest, whether it is Tashigi or Kuina, there is no doubt about the talent of swordsmanship, otherwise it would be impossible to suppress the young Zoro. But precisely because of her physical problems, she was unable to become stronger or even fully utilize her talents. If Koshiro had found a zone devil fruit for Kuina to eat, it would have been difficult for Zoro to defeat him in kendo. It's a pity that Koshiro is a pure swordsman, a swordsman from Wano Kuni. Because of this, they are disdainful and even disapproval of external forces like devil fruit. This also caused the limits of women in their minds to be locked, completely destroying a swordsman genius. But now that Tashigi wants to eat devil fruit, this is also a very good opportunity. As long as you make up for your own shortcomings and rely on your swordsmanship talent, it is entirely possible to catch up from behind and even reach a higher level. Indeed, I will not give up swordsmanship. At this time, Tashigi also spoke solemnly. For kendo, her persistence is deep in her bones. Even if she chooses to eat devil fruit, she wants to strengthen her physique, improve her flaws and become stronger in the sword. That's it. With a calm smile, Ron looked at Tashigi and said, so the most suitable one for you is the devil fruit grown by Zone Ancient. Unlike the devil fruit of the phantom beast species, which is rare and difficult to obtain, there are a lot of devil fruits of the ancient species, and as an ancient species, the enhanced physique is also extremely huge, and even the increase after half-animal transformation is greater than that of the phantom beast species after half-animal transformation. Stronger. If you are an ancient species of dragon, tiger, or elephant type, then your growth rate can reach ultimate, allowing you to always far exceed the limit of physical strength, speed and defense of men. Gouda after listening to Ron's story, Tashigi couldn't help but swallowed. Without him, if it is true as Ron said, if he eats the zone ancient devil fruit recommended by him, then in the future, there is even the possibility of competing for the world's largest tank. Even if he is not a pure swordsman, his potential is undoubted. Thank you. As soon as he thought of this, Tashigi stepped forward and bowed deeply to Ron to express his gratitude. It doesn't have to be this way. Waving his hand, Ron said calmly, Zoro and I are partners. By the way, please leave a contact information for Zoro. If we encounter a devil fruit that suits you, we will contact you directly. Good. Nodding, Insiki did not refuse. She knows that devil fruit is of extraordinary value, and even some special devil fruit are hard to come by. Although she is now a marine, she cannot easily obtain devil fruit, let alone the precious ancient species. Straw Hat. At this moment, Smoker's angry roar interrupted the conversation between Ron and others. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that Smoker is extremely embarrassed at this moment, and there is even a trace of blood on his forehead. What's the situation? Smoker is hurt. Seeing this situation, Ron and others raised their eyebrows, with a look of astonishment in their eyes. After all, Smoker is Logia. Even if it's a little embarrassing, everyone can understand and accept it. But now he is actually injured and even bleeding, which is a bit surprising. I see. But just for a moment, Ron's eyes were locked on Luffy. Ron felt relieved when he saw the water dripping on his arm. Luffy's decision was to injure the enemy by 1000 and lose himself by 800. He soaked his arm in seawater, which also weakened his own strength. But because of this, his attack can also pose a threat to Smoker and even cause fatal injuries. It is undeniable that Luffy's behavior is very risky, but it is also extremely practical. Impossible. How could Colonel Smoker be injured? That's Logia. How could it be attacked? At the same time, waves of exclamations resounded throughout the sea at this moment. Those marines who were forced to hide in the sea by Nami's fire clouds were also dumbfounded and couldn't believe what they were seeing. Especially Smoker. After 3 months of hard training, the latter's strength is not inferior to that of the Naval Headquarters Commodore, and now he is actually injured by Luffy. This is simply... Hey, it worked. On the contrary, Luffy was grinning at this moment. Although he was a little weak, he still had a smile on his face when he saw that he could really hit Smoker. Immediately afterwards, Luffy did not waste any time and directly accelerated towards Smoker to attack. Asshole. In this regard, Smoker is also on fire. Luffy's move was to completely ignore him. The strategy of injuring the enemy by 1000 and damaging yourself by 800 would only break his elementalization. Although he was injured before, in Smoker's opinion, it was caused by his own carelessness and relying too much on the power of elementalization. Already prepared, how could Smoker be injured? Without any hesitation, Smoker directly attacked and shouted angrily. Even if there is no elementalization, I will let you know how huge the gap between you and me is. The next second, Smoker and Luffy started to fight head-on. The Marine 6 styles were used vividly by Smoker, and the fight with Luffy, who was in second gear, became more and more intense. Good guy, Luffy is really smart. Seeing this situation, Zoro said with emotion, if this is the case, then I can also fight Smoker. Seawater can restrain demon fruit power, at least it can break his elementalization. If I soaked my sword with marine, it should also be able to destroy the elemental structure, allowing him to fight me head-on. Speaking of this, Zoro looked extremely excited. After all, the previous elementalization was indeed unsolvable. I never expected that after Luffy's actions, he would find a way to crack it. Even if he only cracked the elementalization, it would be enough to give him the confidence to fight Logia forever. I didn't expect it either. Ron also twitched the corner of his mouth. He also didn't expect that such a cool operation like Luffy could really succeed. From this, it seems that it is not impossible that Luffy used blood and water to break Crocodile's elementalization in the original work. This is really an outrageous setting. When did Logia have so many weaknesses? After shaking his head, Ron looked at the figures fighting each other and then said, Zoro, you can go too. Luffy is a demon fruit power. Although he used the power of seawater to break Smoker's elementalization, he himself is also weak and cannot stop Smoker at all. You can also give it a try, just in time to test your guess just now. Good. Hearing this, Zoro did not refuse. He could also see that Smoker was indeed strong when he was in a rage. Luffy's strategy of injuring the enemy by 1000 and damaging himself by 800 is right, but since he is an ability user, he may have damaged more than 1200. Thinking of this, Zoro ran directly to the seaside area, soaked his 3 knives, turned around and attacked Smoker. Luffy, let me help you. Smoker, look at the knife. Accompanied by a low shout, he asked to intervene. The seawater-stained blade passed by and slashed straight towards Smoker's body. Chapter 70 Zoro Luffy's Smoker, Light Lion Fruit is reborn. Roronoa Zoro. Smoker's eyes narrowed slightly as the sword light illuminated him. Looking at the attacking Zoro and the obvious seawater droplets still on the blade, his face darkened. He never expected that there would be such a way to crack the elemental transformation. Just relying on the power of a little seawater directly disrupted the elementalization ability, which made him feel extremely aggrieved. I even doubt whether it is true that Logia is so powerful. Otherwise, how could the most proud elementalization be cracked so easily? Shave. Although depressed, Smoker did not choose to fight head-on. He lost his 10 hands before, and now he doesn't have any weapons in his hands. Faced with the swordsman's surprise attack, even Smoker dared not say that he could block it 100%. Zoro, why are you here? As Smoker avoided it, Luffy also got a chance to breathe at this moment. He turned to look at Zoro and asked, if you can't hold on any longer, I will naturally come to help you. With a calm smile, Zoro looked at Luffy and said, Luffy, can you still hold on? Certainly. Grinning, although tired, Luffy had no intention of giving up at this moment. Well, let's go together. Seeing this situation, Zoro also laughed and said, although we can't do anything to him this time, we don't need Ron to take action. Hearing this, Luffy also nodded. Indeed, what happened in Logue Town last time made both of them extremely frustrated. Even working together can't help Smoker, and is even suppressed by him in all aspects. Now we finally have a chance. Although we can't defeat Smoker alone, we still have a lot of confidence in joining forces. Thinking of this, Luffy and Zoro did not hesitate and immediately attacked Sealu. Asshole. Seeing this situation, Smoker couldn't help but grit his teeth. Facing the attacking Luffy and Zoro, he dodged directly to the side area and picked up a knife, and then fought with Luffy and Zoro again. Jung in an instant, fire burst out. The blades collided constantly, and Smoker was 1 against 2. Although he was a little embarrassed and in a hurry, he was still able to cope with it with his strong strength. And as Luffy and Zoro's water gradually decreased, Smoker became more comfortable during the battle. Ron. We won. At the same time, Nami, Sanji and Usopp happily came to the area next to Ron. Although a little tired, the 3 of them were extremely excited at this moment. With the 3 of them working together, the more than 100 Marines had already been defeated. At this moment, they are all in the sea, and the fire cloud created by Nami has blocked the shore. Once those Marines try to break into it, the flames in the fire cloud will be instantly ignited, and they will definitely be seriously injured or even die directly. After all, almost all of the Marines at this moment were injured, and their combat effectiveness was probably weakened. Well done. Seeing this, Ron couldn't help but praise him. It can be said that the 3 months in the Lost Land this time directly opened a huge gap between the Straw Hat Pirates and the original work. Especially Nami. Having directly mastered the power of this fruit, she can now be said to be one of the main combat forces within the Straw Hat Pirates. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, since those Marines have been defeated, there is no need to kill them all. After all, these guys are not the Menka and rats we encountered before. Now we just have to wait for Smoker's defeat, and this matter will be completely over. As soon as these words came out, they immediately aroused the recognition of Sanji and others beside him. None of them were indiscriminate killers. Almost all of the Marines they had killed before were serious criminals. On the contrary, although the group of people in front of them were all Marines, under the leadership of Smoker, no one dared to do those unscrupulous things. Rumble. Rumble suddenly, a roaring sound suddenly attracted everyone's attention. Following the sound, you can see the warship quietly exploding in the distance, countless flames rising up, and you can vaguely see 2 figures floating there. Among them, a woman holding an umbrella floated, and a man with an afro was grabbed by one hand. At this moment, the man with the afro kept digging out his nose and threw it at the Marine warship, causing a series of big explosions. What's the situation? Who is attacking the Marine warship? Seeing this situation, Usopp and others were dumbfounded. I didn't expect such a thing to happen at all. The Marine warship was directly attacked by him. Even looking at this posture, it was obvious that the other party came with the intention of completely destroying the warship. It's them. Mr. .5 and Miss Valentine. Seeing this, Ron narrowed his eyes slightly. He remembered that these two people also appeared here in the original book, in order to hunt down Vivi and Ikaram. But now that Ikaram is dead, Vivi is also protected in the warship. This time, the two Mr. Fives attacked the marine warship. There is no doubt that they wanted to kill Vivi who was inside. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, "This is a member of the Baroque working group and a subordinate of Shichibukai Crocodile. The woman's name is Miss Valentine. She is a paramecia light lion fruit user. She can make her body weigh 10,000 kilograms or even heavier. She can also fly as light as a feather. That man is Mr. Five. He is a paramecia explosive fruit user. He can turn his boogers into cannonballs to attack." Having said this, Ron couldn't help but curl his lips and looked at the two of them with disdain. For no other reason, whether it is a light lion fruit or an explosive fruit, in Ron's opinion, it is an extremely powerful paramecia devil fruit. It's a pity that the development of these two guys is simply stretched to ultimate. Although the light lion fruit only acts on itself and cannot affect the objects it comes into contact with, it is also extremely powerful in nature. Whether it is floating or the blessing of weight, it is an extremely powerful method. If you can specialize in physical skills and reach a certain level of physical skills, then combined with the power of the light lion fruit, you can make your movements extremely fast, and even the intensity of the attack is extremely terrifying. Speed plus strength, coupled with weight, what a powerful blessing and increase this is. It's a pity that Miss Valentine only uses herself as a heavy object to hit the opponent. With your small body, can't you avoid it in seconds? In the original book, Valentine charged up his energy for such a long time to launch an attack, but Zoro just avoided it by turning sideways. This is simply nonsense development. As for MR5's explosive fruit, it's even more terrifying. Although it can only turn a part of itself into a bomb, the bomb cannot affect itself, which means that the explosive fruit is essentially a taijutsu fruit. If your physical skills are strong enough, once you come into contact with the opponent in close combat, you can directly turn part of your body into a bomb and hit it, or even penetrate it into the opponent's body. Walk each other. What? He's Shichibukai's subordinate again. Damn it, they attacked the marine warship so blatantly, they are really lawless. After listening to Ron's words, Tashigi was furious. After all, she is also a marine now, and the behavior of these two people seems to be provoking, or even ignoring their existence. But she didn't know moonwalk, and she couldn't attack those two guys in midair. For a moment, Tashigi couldn't help but looked at Ron subconsciously and said, "Ron, can you help me take down those two guys?" Although we don't know why they attacked the warship, such provocation cannot be tolerated. As soon as these words came out, Sanji, Usopp and Nami on the side also looked at Ron. They also want to help, but after all, they are enemies, so it would be inappropriate to help Marine when the outcome has not yet been determined. No problem. Hearing this, Ron was extremely indifferent. Looking at the figure in midair, he immediately said, "Just leave this matter to me." But the purpose of their attack on the marine warship is the Alabasta princess who is being protected. Go and get her out. By the way, Usopp give me 2 fruits, I see. Hearing this, Yinziki suddenly realized. After knowing the target of those guys' attack, they did not hesitate and quickly flew towards the marine warship. Here you go, Ron. As for Usopp, although he didn't know why Ron wanted fruit, he still took out 2 apples and handed them to Ron. Zero. Please give me flowers. Immediately afterwards, he quickly chased Sanji and others. Very good. Looking at the fruit in his hand, the corners of Ron's mouth rose. After putting it in his arms, he also looked at Valentine and M5 in midair. Ron wanted to try to see if he could transfer the power of devil fruit to them after killing 2 people and a fruit was approaching. After the hypnosis division was killed by him, the hypnosis fruit was reborn in the area within the island. This also means that this matter has a probability of being completed. Whether it is a light lion fruit or an explosive fruit, to be honest, the value is pretty good. It's a good time to take this opportunity to try it. If it works, there will be another way to capture the potential devil fruit in the future. Thinking of this, Ron didn't hesitate, jumped up and directly stepped on the moonwalk and flew into the sky. A moment later, his figure appeared in the area where Miss Valentine and MR5 were. Discharge. Without giving the two a chance to react, Ron directly raised his hand and activated his ability. Neither Valentine nor Mr. 5 are actually very strong, they are only at the captain level. After all, in the original work, the bounties for the two of them were only a few million and more than 10 million. The next second, lightning shot out and fell on the native. Ah, the screams resounded, and Miss Valentine and Mr. 5 immediately rolled their eyes and passed out. Zero. Waste. Seeing this, Ron curled his lips in disdain. He grabbed the two of them and took them back to the ground using moonwalk. But Ron did not stay at the coastline, but grabbed the two of them and flew quickly, and soon they came to a mountain forest. After casually throwing the two of them on the ground, Ron locked his eyes on them and pulled out the bloody blade from his waist and stabbed them out without hesitation. Peefed, blood splattered, and the M5 died tragically without even waking up. At the same time, Ron went to stay with the fruit in his arms without hesitation. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, soon, more than 10 minutes passed, and none of the apples in Ron's hands turned into devil fruit. No. Seeing this scene, Ron frowned with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. After all, this can be regarded as proving one thing, that is, after killing the demon fruit power, its devil fruit power will be reborn immediately, instead of being fixed at the nearby area. Mr. 5, at this time, there was a loud voice. Miss Valentine has awakened while Ron was waiting for the fruit to be reborn. After seeing the dead Mr. 5, his whole body collapsed, and his eyes were filled with fear and terror. She knew that she was no match for Ron. The man in front of them was extremely terrifying, and he defeated them with just one move. Under such circumstances, she didn't even have the possibility of escaping. For a moment, Miss Valentine's heart collapsed. Are you awake? After coming back to his senses, Ron turned to look at Miss Valentine beside him. I have to say that there are many beauties in the One Piece world. Although Miss Valentine's outfit is not in good taste, her long legs are really attractive. But for Ron, this was only a momentary thought, and he raised the bloody blade in his hand to slash without hesitation. Peeved. Before he could even say his last words, Miss Valentine was killed by Ron. She has a good figure and looks okay, but to be honest, Ron didn't have much interest in this kind of woman who did many evil things. After successfully killing Miss Valentine, Ron didn't intend to stay any longer and turn around to leave. After all, I have been delayed here for more than 10 minutes and I don't know how the battle on the coastline is going. Huh. Suddenly, Ron's steps stopped for a moment. For no other reason than because one of the two apples he threw on the ground actually began to change at this moment. No way. Will it really be transferred? With a raised brow, Ron quickly stepped forward with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. After waiting for about a minute, the apple was completely transformed into a devil fruit, which turned out to be a light lion fruit. Chapter 71 Tip Smoker, hired by Vivi. Okay. Seeing the light lion fruit completely reborn, Ron picked it up from the ground with great joy. After looking at it for a few times, Ron raised the corners of his mouth and said, although it's not stable. But there is no doubt that when the demon fruit power dies, the probability of the fruit reborn nearby will be much greater. It's just that I can't achieve 100% control, and I can't reach the level of Blackbeard in the original work. I think he wrapped his body in black cloth just to block his ability to capture the devil fruit, instead of just a black cloth that can ensure that the devil fruit will be 100% reborn next to him. But such a discovery is not bad. At least in the future, if you stock up on some fruits during some battles, you can increase the possibility of collecting devil fruit. After saying that, Ron put the light lion fruit into his arms, turned around and walked towards the outside world. Soon, Ron returned to the coastline area. Looking around, the battle is over at this moment. All three lose. Luffy, Zoro and Smoker were all tied up, and they were all lying there unable to move. In an area not far away, Vivi has also been rescued by Tashigi and others, but she is extremely embarrassed at this moment, with wounds all over her body. She looks extremely frightened. Tashigi, Sanji, Usopp and Nami were not seriously injured, but there were two corpses in the area next to them. They were the two female marines who were sent to protect Vivi before. It's over. But I'm afraid what happened this time will continue to stimulate the continued progress of Zoro, Luffy and Smoker. Feeling relieved, Ron walked straight to the 620 area. Soon he arrived at where Luffy and the other three were. Luffy, Zoro, how do you feel? Can you still stand up? Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro nodded. Immediately afterwards, the two struggled to get up from the ground. The battle has been over for a while, and they have all recovered some strength at this moment. At this time, Smoker also stood up from the ground. After giving Luffy and Zoro a complicated look, he glared at Ron and said, "You guy, I will definitely defeat you." Although there was no fighting this time, but Smoker already knew that Ron was stronger than Luffy and Zoro. He thought he could avenge his disgrace this time, but who would have thought that he would end up in a tie with Luffy and Zoro, which made him feel extremely uncomfortable and depressed. Unfortunately, he doesn't have much power now, and there is no possibility of keeping Ron and others at all. To put it bluntly, if Ron were to take action, all Marine including him would be destroyed today. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Shrugging, Ron scoffed. It is undeniable that Smoker's talent is there and his potential is good. Although Smoke Fruit is a bit weak, he still has some potential. The most important thing is that Smoker's righteous heart is unquestionable. Although his zero tolerance towards pirates is somewhat hawkish, he himself is not a single-minded existence and knows how to be grateful and protect the people. It can be said that Smoker is one of the very few Marines in the world of One Piece who truly has a righteous heart. Ron will not kill him unless it is absolutely necessary. After all, with such an existence, to be honest, if he becomes the king of the world in the future, Smoker will definitely be a good subordinate. Thinking of this, Ron stepped forward and patted Smoker on the shoulder and said, "You can see it, too. To be honest, your Smoke Fruit potential is not great. It cannot be compared with some top lobias. Although your development is good, it has not reached a high level in essence. The main reason is because of your own lack of foundation. If I were you, I would increase my physical fitness and Marine 6 styles training, and then continue to perfect Smoke Fruit, not the ability but the elementalization. After all, your elementalization is indeed a bit stretched. I guess you haven't developed it properly, otherwise how could it be disrupted by a little bit of seawater?" As soon as these words came out, Smoker couldn't help but froze. He raised his head and looked at Ron in disbelief, and said in disbelief, why are you? At this moment, Smoker was puzzled. He had no idea why Ron would say such words, and even point out the way for him to become stronger in the future. Especially this incident had a huge impact on him. Logia's elementalization was actually broken by the seawater. This was simply a shame. But now after listening to Ron's words and narration, he seems to have understood his own strengths and weaknesses, but because of this, he is also extremely complicated inside. After all, Ron is a pirate, his opponent, and his enemy. No reason. Shrugging, Ron retracted his hand and walked to the side of Luffy and Zoro. Then he looked at Smoker and said, although our Straw Hat Pirates are pirates, we never burn, kill or loot weak civilians. We target there all the ones who deserve it. We all already know what is going on with you. The White Hunter of East Blue has protected many people from being attacked by pirates. In essence, you are not our enemy. Smoker, good luck. After saying that, Ron didn't linger and took Luffy and Zoro directly to the area where Sanji and others were not far away. The battle is over. They don't need to stay any longer. Buy some supplies as soon as possible and then leave. You can't stay here with Marine for too long. Otherwise, when Smoker and others recover, there will be another fierce battle. Ron. Looking at Ron and the three people leaving, Smoker couldn't help but tighten his fists at this moment. To be honest, he really didn't expect things to turn out like this. But there is no doubt that Ron's last words touched him greatly. Sanji, Nami, Usopp. At this time, Ron and the other three had arrived at the venue. After taking a look at the sad Tashigi and the lost Vivi, he immediately said, you go to the town to buy some supplies and come back. I'll take Luffy and Zoro back to rest first. After purchasing the materials as soon as possible, we should set off. It is not suitable to stay here for a long time. $7. Good. Hearing this, Sanji and the three of them also nodded. The battle is over. Smoker, Luffy and Zoro were all defeated. It can be said that this time is the victory of the Straw Hat Pirates. After all, Ron, the strongest member of the Straw Hat Pirates, has not taken action from beginning to end, so they don't need to stay. Although they get along well with Tashigi, it doesn't mean that Sanji and others recognize the existence of those Marines. Thinking of this, the three of them immediately ran towards the town. After Ron nodded to Tashigi, he took Luffy and Zoro directly to the Mary. Tashigi. At this time, Smoker also spoke, Colonel Smoker. Hearing this, Tashigi came to his senses and quickly walked to where Smoker was. Glancing at the Marine who was still fighting the fire in the distance, Smoker looked at Tashigi and said, give me the order. We will be repairing here for 3 days, and we will also ask the nearby Marine base to send a warship to come to the rescue. As for the Straw Hat Pirates, we have not encountered them. They have entered the Grand Line and we will continue to pursue them. Yes. Hearing this, Yinseki smiled. He knows what smokerized language means. It seems that the pursuit of the Straw Hat Pirates will continue, and the Straw Hat Pirates will not be let go. But in fact, the existence of the Straw Hat Pirates has been recognized, and the subsequent pursuit cannot be treated like life and death enemies. Thinking of this, Inseki immediately walked to the area where the warship was located in the distance and announced Smoker's order. About 2 hours later, Sanji and others returned from completing their purchases. This time, they purchased a lot of things, even calling them small mountain bags is not an exaggeration. However, relying on Nami's fruits as a means of transportation, the materials were quickly transferred to the Mary. However, just as Ron and others were about to leave, a voice quietly sounded. Every one of the Straw Hat Pirates, I want to ask for your help. Looking through the sound, it can be seen that Vivi's figure has arrived at the location of the melee at some point. You are the princess, what are you doing here? Seeing the person coming, Nami frowned and asked. In addition to him, others including Usopp also did not give Vivi a good look. After all, Vivi's behavior before was indeed unpleasant. Even Sanji, who couldn't walk when he saw a woman, had a serious look on his face at the moment, with no intention of expressing his affection at all. And all this is because of the previous tit-for-tat confrontation between Vivi and Ron, which made them not have very good feelings about Vivi. Seeing the hostile looks on Luffy's and others' faces, Vivi was feeling very annoyed at the moment. She knew that all this must be because of the conflict between him and Ron before. The most important thing is that his bodyguard Ikaram was killed by Ron. Now she had to come here for help, which made her feel extremely aggrieved and unwilling. But she was the princess after all, and this assassination also hurt her deeply. He knew very well that his identity had been exposed and he would never be able to return to Alabasta safely. He would even be pursued by the Baroque Works Society. Thinking of this, Vivi looked at Ron and others, bowed and said, my name is Vivi, and I am the princess of Alabasta. I am very sorry for what happened before. It was my willfulness that brought you a bad feeling. I came to see you this time because I want to make a deal with you. Trade? Hearing this, except for Ron, Sanji and others all showed doubts. After all, they had no idea that the princess of a country wanted to trade something with them. On the contrary, Ron knew her purpose very well, but he didn't interrupt her. He also wanted to see how Vivi would convince the Straw Hat Pirates to help him deal with Crocodile without the situation in the original work. Yes. Nodding, Vivi said without any nonsense. The Alabasta where I am is now controlled by Crocodile, one of the Shichibukai. He has even controlled the rebels to seize my country. But my power is too weak and I can't compete with him at all. Even if I joined the Baroque working society and learn about some of the evil things he did, there is still no possibility of stopping him. But I have seen your strength before, it is It's powerful, even extremely terrifying. Having said this, Vivi looked at Ron subconsciously. When he was bombed before, he walked out of the cabin under the protection of Marine, and saw Ron instantly kill Miss Valentine. It can be said that Ron's power seemed extremely mysterious to her, even extremely terrifying. If he was such a man, he might really have the possibility of defeating Crocodile. Thinking of this, Vivi continued. So, I hope to hire you to help me save Alabasta so that the people in the country will no longer encounter Crocodile. Of poison. Hearing this, Luffy and others all looked at each other. To be honest, they didn't expect Vivi to say such words. Hiring them to deal with Shichibukai does sound like a cool thing. 4.4 Luffy is a little ready to make a move at this moment. But before he could speak, Nami on the side also took the lead and said, Impossible. Shichibukai is such a powerful person, why should we take risks for you? How much can you pay to hire us? Obviously, Nami didn't really want to refuse, but more wanted to know Vivi's bargaining chip. 1 billion Baileys, however, before Nami could continue to say anything, Vivi had already offered her chips in advance. If you can help me recapture Alabasta and defeat Crocodile. If he is driven away, then I intend to pay 1 billion belly as a reward on behalf of the Alabasta royal family. Hearing this, Nami and others couldn't help but take a deep breath. 1 billion Baileys. That's a lot of money, even Ron was shocked. Although Vivi intends to take advantage of everyone, this billion Bailey is indeed very tempting. Ron, are you sure? However, after being surprised, Nami calmed down first and turned to look at Ron and asked. After all, the benefits are so huge, but they also represent huge risks. Under such circumstances, Nami didn't dare to guarantee it. In the original book, she was willing because she could get 1 billion belly just by sending Vivi back, but now she has to deal with Crocodile, which is a Shichibukai. You can give it a try. Shrugging, Ron said calmly. He is Shichibukai after all, and to be honest, I am also very curious about his strength. As soon as these words came out, Luffy was also excited and said, yes, I also want to see the power of Shichibukai. Chapter 72 Sanji and Nami ask for help, Zoro becomes a swordsman. And with Ron and Luffy taking a stand, Zoro on the side also tightened the knife in his hand and said with full fighting spirit, I also want to try to see the difference with the so-called Shichibukai. Although this battle is a bit decadent, I have fully understood the secret of cutting iron. If nothing happens, I will be promoted to swordsman in 3 to 5 days. Having said this, Zoro couldn't help but smile, from swordsman to swordsman. He has been working hard for more than 10 years, and now he is finally finished. Swordsman. Real? Hearing this, Luffy and others also looked at Zoro in surprise. He never expected that he would be promoted to a swordsman so soon. You know, although Zoro had already understood the secret of cutting iron before, it would still take some time to fully understand it. Unexpectedly, after just one fight with Smoker, he had already understood and mastered everything. It is really gratifying. Well, after receiving answers from Ron, Zoro and Luffy, Nami breathed a sigh of relief at this moment. Then, she looked at Vivi and said, we agree to your employment. Very good. Hearing this, Vivi was immediately overjoyed. No matter what, with the help of Ron and others, the hope of saving Alabasta is greater. And after witnessing their previous battle with Marine, Vivi knew in her heart that their strength should not be underestimated. Taking a deep breath, Vivi took out an eternal pointer from her arms and handed it out. This is the eternal pointer to Alabasta. You just have to follow the pointer and you'll reach Alabasta. First we'll follow Marine. Shichibukai wants to control Alabasta. I need to contact Marine and get help from Naval Headquarters. Different from the original work. When Vivi was captured by Smoker, she was planning to turn to Marine for help. The most important thing is that she cannot form a friendship with the Straw Hat Pirates like in the original work. After all, Ikaram was killed by Ron, which also led to Vivi not being able to open her heart in a true sense. In this regard, Ron and others did not refuse. To be honest, everyone knows about Vivi's situation. But that doesn't mean they all agree with it. In the original book, if it weren't for Nami's love of money, Zoro would have ignored this matter at all, would not have helped Vivi and others, and would have even killed Ikaram, Vivi and others immediately. Then we'll see you in Alabasta. After waving her hand, Vivi didn't linger, turned around and got off the Mary. As she left, Ron and others also chose to leave directly on the Mary. If nothing else, it's really not a good place to stay for a long time. Once the support from Marine comes, the battle will be inevitable. As the Straw Hat Pirates left, Vivi's expression gradually darkened. But soon, she gathered her inner emotions, turned around and walked towards the area where Smoker and Marine were waiting. All she needs to do now is get Marine's help, and it also requires the help of Naval Headquarters, so the existence of Smoker and others must be used to convey this news. After all, she also knew very well that as Logia demon fruit power, Smoker's status within Marine would not be too bad. Even though he is just a Marine colonel, in a sense, Logia's identity makes Smoker definitely a special Marine colonel within Marine. On the other side, Ron and others were driving away on a boat. After a hearty meal, Luffy recovered immediately. Zoro's condition also improved a lot, and then everyone began to exercise tacitly to enhance their own strength. Especially Zoro. Having thoroughly comprehended the secrets of cutting iron, he was eager to become a swordsman as soon as possible, and he did not dare to slack off at this moment. Ron. As the atmosphere of exercise became more and more intense, suddenly Sanji came to Ron's side. After looking around carefully, Sanji said somewhat complicatedly, "Ron, do you think my strength can be improved faster?" Although nothing was said, but Sanji was unwilling to accept it in his heart. There is no doubt that the strength of Ron, Zoro and Luffy is the top of the Straw Hat Pirates. Sanji was not weak before, and in a sense he was not inferior to Luffy and Zoro before him. After 3 months of hard training this time, Sanji also felt that the gap between the two sides was getting bigger and bigger. Especially Zoro. Now he is about to become a swordsman, and his strength will be greatly improved. Luffy's second gear is even more powerful after being integrated into Marine 6 styles. Only Sanji, while mastering Shave, Moonwalk and Tempest Kick. But Sanji also understands that his progress is limited, and it can even be said that he is in a special confinement and shackles at this moment. He is now eager to take another step forward, from captain level to school level, but no matter how hard he trains and practices, he cannot complete it, which makes him feel extremely confused. After giving Sanji an appraising look, Ron said, "To be honest, your potential is not inferior to that of Luffy and Zoro, and your own physique is also extremely special. It's just that Sanji, you haven't activated the power in your body, which is why you are almost like an ordinary person now. But there is no doubt that if you want to go further, you will need more training and fighting. Only by thoroughly improving your own attack methods and even your own path can you reach the school level. But this doesn't happen overnight. If you want to complete it in a short time, you must either activate the bloodline factor dream in your body or eat the devil fruit like Nami." As soon as these words came out, Sanji's expression changed drastically. It wasn't because of what Ron said about devil fruit, but because Ron actually knew that he had the blood factor in his body. This is the method of the Vinsmoke family, and it is also his father's technological skills. Being able to inject bloodline factors into a child's body is equivalent to turning it into a paramecia demon fruit power, or even an existence without any demon fruit power defects. It's a pity that Sanji's blood factor has not awakened, and it has not even revealed any clues so far. Because of this, Sanji's expression was extremely complicated. He looked at Ron and said, "Ron, who are you? How could you possibly know such a thing? Even Jeffu and the others don't know about this." Hearing this, Ron smiled lightly. He knows that Sanji resists the Vinsmoke family. But there is no doubt that the main reason why Sanji will be able to stably become one of the Straw Hat Pirates poster boys in the future is because of the awakening of the blood factor in his body. Comparable to Big Mom's body of steel, endless physical strength and potential. Coupled with Germa's battle uniform, it can be said that he can be compared to the Emperor's deputy. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, "Sanji, there is no point in blindly avoiding and escaping. Although rumors say that you are a failed work, in my opinion you are a successful existence in the true sense. Although your brothers and sisters are indeed famous and have even awakened extraordinary powers, they have essentially broken away from human nature. This also leads to the fact that even if they become works, their own limits will not be too great. Even reaching the admiral level is impossible. But you are different. It seems that you have failed, but I think it is because the blood factor is completely integrated with you. As long as you can activate the bloodline factor, this power will make your strength leap forward, and even reach a more powerful level." As soon as these words came out, Sanji's body trembled. "Are you the truly successful work?" Sanji couldn't believe this, and even felt extremely ridiculous. But looking at Ron's serious expression, Sanji stopped speaking. "Is it true? Am I the truly perfect work?" Muttering in his heart, Sanji was a little worried about what was going to happen and said, "Thanks for the advice." After saying that, he didn't linger, turned around and walked aside. The information in this matter was too big, which made him unable to react for a while, and even found it difficult to accept it. "Ron." Seeing this, Nami walked up to him and asked in confusion, "What's wrong with Sanji?" After all, Sanji usually has a very optimistic attitude, so why does he look a little depressed and gloomy now? "Nothing." After coming back to his senses, Ron smiled calmly and said, "It's just that he hasn't figured out some things yet and can't accept it yet. I believe that sooner or later he will be able to figure these things out." "Oh." Nami nodded, not knowing what was going on. But since Ron didn't tell her, it was hard for her to find out any secrets about Sanji, and she didn't really care. Thinking of this, Nami immediately walked to Ron's side and said, "Ron, I finished Huo Xiao Yun. But I don't have any clue about Lei Yun's development. Is there anything you can do?" Obviously, although Nami is satisfied with her own strength, she is not complacent either. Even after the incident on Orange Island, Nami's love had changed from a simple money-obsessed to a money-obsessed in pursuit of strength. Because she knows the importance of strength. If her own strength is insufficient, then what happened on Orange Island might happen to her again. This is something she doesn't want to see or accept. Not urgent. Hearing this, Ron smiled calmly, looked at Nami and said, if you want to develop Thundercloud, you have to wait until the storm period. By then, you will be able to find opportunities with more understanding. 17. Moreover, the development of Devil Fruit is from weak to strong, and it is not just the end after developing new abilities. The power of your Huashaoyun is indeed good, but for stronger beings, the flame temperature of the Huashaoyun cannot pose any threat. In this way, your Huo-Shao-Yun will become a useless existence, so instead of focusing on the development of Lei Yun, you might as well continue to develop Huo-Shao-Yun. Transform the fire clouds into forms, such as dragons, snakes, and birds. Then the fire attribute in Huashaoyun is enhanced, so that its temperature is greatly reduced. Or it could be to enhance the explosion reaction of the flame in the cloud sword, so that the fire cloud throne can destroy everything like a cannonball. As Ron told her story, Nami became very excited for a moment. Not for anything else, because the development ideas provided by Ron made her extremely excited. And these can all be developed. Although it may be difficult and troublesome, she also knows that once completed, she will definitely get huge benefits. When she thought of this, Nami was very excited. She gave Ron a hug and said, then I will go to 767 to continue development. I will definitely develop Huo-Shao-Yun to be even more powerful. After saying that, Nami didn't linger, turned around and hurriedly ran towards the side area. In response, Ron smiled calmly. After mentioning Nami, he fell into deep thought. At the current stage, his lightning fruit ability will be mainly based on the speed force. Therefore, he does not care about the intensity of the lightning itself, but the power in the super speed force mode still needs to be enhanced. Therefore, he still needs to further develop and enhance his own lightning, and even make it more powerful. Decided. First develop the strength of the lightning fruit itself, and then continue to strengthen the speed force and other methods. You can't stop practicing the sword drawing technique of Kendo, you need to speed up the completion. Having made up his mind, Ron took action without hesitation. In the morning, practice the art of drawing swords. The afternoon and evening are devoted to developing Devil Fruit. Time flies, and a week has passed in the blink of an eye. Cut. With a low cry, Ron drew his sword and slashed, and a bolt of lightning sword energy shot out, landing directly on the sea in the distance. In an instant, the electric light flashed. You can clearly see that the power of lightning spreads, and the fish floats directly due to the electricity, and the smell of roasting is emitted all over their bodies. Medium swordsman. At this time, Zoro's voice sounded. Following the sound, it can be seen that he is striding forward. After taking one look at the damage caused by Ron, Zoro took off the snow and handed it out. Congratulations, your sword practice is really fast. I have reached the level of an intermediate swordsman so quickly, which I was only able to accomplish a few years ago. Seeing this, Ron smiled lightly. He reached out to grab the thrown snow and hung it around his waist. Immediately afterwards, he threw the bloody blade to Zoro and said with an upward smile, congratulations to you too, for successfully becoming a swordsman. I keep my promise and give you this knife as a gift. I hope you can grasp and use it well, of course. The corners of his mouth rose. Zoro was extremely happy at this moment. Swordsman. He finally became a swordsman. Look, there's an island somewhere. At this moment, a cry came. Looking up, you can see that on the sea ahead, the outline of a huge island is gradually emerging. At this moment, a huge sword energy came out from the island. The next second, the sea was directly separated. Under the terrifying sword energy, a huge sea waterfall took shape. The huge fluctuations even pulled the Mary towards the sea. The island sailed away. Chapter 73 Landing in Little Garden, the horror of the giant battle. B. Amidst the turbulence of the seawater, the Mary spun crazily. Usopp and others who were in it had to hold on to the hull next to them to maintain balance. Seeing the Mary getting closer and closer to the cut sea surface, Ron's face became ugly. Although Little Garden is within easy reach, they can definitely cast Moonwalk and enter it. But as a result, the melee will definitely be damaged, and it is very likely that it will be directly destroyed. This is definitely something that no one can accept, and it is something that they are not willing to bear. Thinking of this, Ron couldn't care less about anything else and immediately said, Nami. I made clouds to cover the hull of the ship, so that the Mary took time to fly and could no longer move forward. Good. Hearing this, Nami, who was in panic, also calmed down. Without any hesitation, she jumped to the mid-air minister. Immediately afterwards, Nami quickly controlled the cloud fruit and began to make clouds. Not long after, the entire hull of the Mary was wrapped in clouds and lifted away from the sea at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this point, the turbulence of the Mary came to an abrupt end. However, Nami's expression was not very good at this moment. If the strength was not strong, it would be very difficult to forcibly lift the melee Chuan with the power of the Wei fruit. What is that? The sword energy actually cut the sea surface. Is this the great swordsman fighting on that island? Staring blankly at the water pouring in from the sea in the distance, Zoro swallowed, his eyes full of envy and yearning. Although he has been promoted to a swordsman, But after seeing the sword energy cutting the sea surface, every bit of excitement in his heart was shattered. Although Hawkeye had done similar things back then, Hawkeye at that time only struck casually, without using much power, and the damage caused was limited. But this attack was obviously different. The raging sea surface and the pouring water all declared that the person who made the move was extremely powerful. Very scary. Is this the power of the great swordsman? It's so powerful that it actually cut off the surface of the sea. At the same time, Usopp and others couldn't help but sigh. Even at this moment, they felt a sense of fear in their hearts. After all, if it hadn't been for Ron's rationality and Nami's action, they would have been involved in it by now, and would have been swept into the seabed by the incoming seawater. Rumble rumble. As time goes by, the roaring sound of the sea gradually decreases. You can clearly see that the sea surface that was cut has been restored at this moment. I can't hold on anymore. At the same time, Mei's weak voice resounded. As the clouds dispersed, the Mary returned directly to the sea. At this moment, Nami also fainted due to excessive consumption. Nami, seeing this, Ron's pupils shrank. He jumped up and hugged Nami. After floating to the ground, Ron looked to the side and said, "Speed up and land on the island as soon as possible. The battle on the island is not over yet, and I don't know if there will be another sword attack." Good, good. Hearing this, Luffy and others also nodded. By now, they are all aware of the dangers of continuing to stay on the sea. Although it can use moonwalk to land, the Mary cannot withstand such damage. Immediately, a group of people broke into the cab. Although Nami was unconscious, they were driving the ship rapidly forward at this moment. About half an hour later, Ron and his team successfully landed on the island. At this point, a group of people also breathed a sigh of relief. After placing the Mary in a bay, they quickly disembarked and arrived at the island. It's considered a landing. I was scared to death. I almost thought I was going to die on the sea. After successfully landing, Usopp sat down on the beach and said with a pale face. As soon as these words came out, Sanji and others on the side also nodded. The scene just now was too shocking. This was the first time they saw a strong swordsman since Hawkeye. "Ron, I'm going to check it out." At this time, Zoro was the first to come back to his senses and look towards the direction where the sword energy stood before, his eyes full of heat and yearning. "Good, I will go with you." Nodding, Ron didn't refuse. Although I know that there are two giants among them. But to be honest, Ron has never witnessed the giant situation with his own eyes. Just take this opportunity to see something. The most important thing is that these two giants master the secret skills of the giant clan, Hikoku and Waiguo. These two sword skills are extremely powerful. Auntie has mastered it, and the power she exerts is extremely terrifying. And this is because Auntie is an ordinary person. If she were a giant, the power she would exert would be even more terrifying. Now that Dory and Brogy are here, maybe we can try to learn their sword skills. Even if it fails, the friendship from the giants is extremely valuable. Look around the world. If a single race were to be ranked, the giants would definitely be number one. After all, even those with poor talent can reach the level of vice admiral when they reach adulthood. Not to mention those giants with good, even outstanding, and extraordinary talents. It's a pity that he didn't see the plot of the giant kingdom in his previous life, and he didn't know what the specific situation was and how powerful it was. "I am coming too. I am coming too." At this time, Luffy, Sanji, Usopp and Nami also spoke one after another. Although dangerous, but they are also extremely curious inside. What kind of existence can produce such terrifying sword energy? Good. Then let's act together. In response, Ron smiled calmly. He knew very clearly that if he wanted to convince Dory and Brogy, he would either have to be strong enough to crush them, or he would have to show his affection. Ron can't do the former. As for the latter, the only one who can do it is Luffy. Go together. After agreeing on their opinions, several people did not hesitate and quickly began to move towards the area where the sword energy was slashed. After about an hour, Ron and his team successfully reached the battle range. You can see that this area has been completely destroyed, and there are fallen trees and destroyed trees all around. Giant. Oh my god, this is too high. Similarly, Brogy and Dory, who were still fighting, also came into their sight. Looking at the two huge giant figures, Luffy, Usopp, Sanji, Zoro and Nami could not help but exclaim. Among them, Luffy and Usopp's eyes were shining brightly, staring directly at Dory and saying, "How cool. Is this the legendary giant? It's so huge, it's really rare." Under such circumstances, everyone's heart is filled with intense shock. After all, they didn't expect that the people fighting on the little garden island would actually be two giants. It's really spectacular. Even though Ron was prepared, he couldn't help but sigh at this moment. After all, the height of these two people is really too high. Their bodies are like mountains. At this moment, they are wielding the huge weapons, and they can easily become a town. The most terrifying thing was that Ron could clearly feel that something was wrong from Dory and Brogy. That is, the strength of both of them seems to be suppressed, and they don't even go all out in the true sense. This also means that the real strength of these two people is far stronger than what is revealed now. But even so, the strength and means of the two at this moment are not inferior to those of General Star and Quasi-Admiral, and are infinitely close to general level and admiral level. It's over, Brogy. At this moment, two low roars sounded. Looking at the sound, it can be seen that Dory and Brogy are obviously planning to end this battle. It can be seen that both of them are swords in the hands of the plot, and they slash towards each other without hesitation. Wei Guo. Wei Guo. In an instant, the two giant clan sword skills exploded and collided directly. The next second, the wind blew violently. Along with a vast force, it swept out and directly covered Ron and others. Ah! With a scream, everyone in the Straw Hat Pirates, including Ron, was hit by the aftermath. The body flew out like an autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves, blood spurted out from his mouth, and he fell to the ground and fell into a coma. After an unknown amount of time, Ron woke up leisurely. He sat up suddenly and looked around. He could see Luffy and others not far from him. Although everyone looked injured, there was no great risk. For a moment, Ron breathed a sigh of relief. After all, under such circumstances, many things are indeed scary. Struggling to stand up, Ron couldn't help but admire Yamato's resilience after his body was transformed into the body of an undead dragon. Immediately afterwards, he gathered Luffy and others together to ensure their safety. After all, at night like this, there are quite a few beasts like these on this island. It seems that it is a bit difficult to reach an agreement or even gain friendship with Dory and Brogy. Rubbing his forehead, Ron murmured without condom, "If I had known this, I wouldn't have killed the M.5. Without this guy's troubles and his schemes against Dory, it would be too difficult to get to know the two of them." Understanding the gap between himself and others, Ron was not too decadent. Instead, he became more and more full of fighting spirit, sitting cross-legged on the spot and continuing to develop his own fruit ability. A night of silence. In the blink of an eye, the next day came. Luffy and others also woke up one after another. The first ones to wake up were undoubtedly Luffy and Zoro. After that came Sanji and Nami, and Usopp didn't wake up until noon. During this period, the Yin family did not speak. Obviously this time the battle between the two giants was very exciting for them. Just the spread of the aftermath of the battle made them unable to stop them, and even fell into a coma directly. This is such a huge gap in power. Terrible. Ron, Luffy, let's go. At this time, Usopp suddenly shouted. At this moment, he was trembling. Obviously he was still frightened by what happened before. Usopp, don't worry. Seeing this, Ron waved his hands helplessly and said, "Those two giants are indeed very powerful. And they all finished fighting yesterday. If nothing else happens, they will all be recovering from their injuries in the next period of time, and we will not be in any great danger. Except for beasts, no other existence can harm us." Hearing this, Usopp breathed a sigh of relief. Not only him, but also Luffy and others beside him. Then, Zoro said, "Swordmaster Tien, these are two giant swordsmen. It's simply too terrifying. Such a terrifying slash, even the world's greatest swordsman can only do this, right?" At this moment, Zoro's eyes were full of heat. The destructive power of Wei Guo's last move really surprised him, and even made him a little excited. "It's really awesome." At this time, Luffy spoke quietly. As if he had made up his mind, Luffy stood up and said, let's go meet the giant. "I thought of a brand new method, Zhao Qianzhao. If we can get in touch with it, I believe we can improve the power of the third gear." Speaking of this, Luffy's eyes were bright. After seeing the giant's method of defeating 10 groups with one strength, Luffy was also eager to become stronger at this moment. And his third gear is to imitate the giant's method. If the giant can communicate with him and let him take a closer look, he will definitely be able to complete the development of the main tip by then. "Luffy, no, Luffy, it's too dangerous." Hearing this, Usopp, Sanji and Nami all subconsciously spoke to stop him. After all, in their minds, Dory and Brogy are not simple characters. If they really want to take the risk again, their lives may be in danger. No need to worry. Seeing this, Ron smiled calmly. After taking a look at Usopp and others, he said directly, "As long as those two giants don't start a war, they won't do anything to us. The top priority now is to see. Better get out of here before their next fight." Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro's eyes lit up. Although Usopp and others were a little hesitant, they were even afraid of paper. But seeing how determined Ron, Luffy and Zoro were, they couldn't refuse. Immediately, a group of people set off again. Without the battle between giants, they only encountered some ferocious beasts along the way. But obviously, those beasts cannot be the opponents of Ron and others. When it came to the door, Ron and others killed it without hesitation, and after Sanji's cooking, they turned it into food and consumed it. It didn't take long for Ron and his team to successfully arrive at Dory's area. You can see where he is sitting, with blood in many areas of his body already ligated, but at this moment he also looks extremely weak and sad. Chapter 74. Meeting Dory for the first time, Ron plans Hoki's cultivation method. He got hurt. It looks like he's seriously injured. After all, his opponent is also a powerful giant and should not be underestimated. Looking at Dory's condition, Luffy and others couldn't help but talk about it. However, they didn't have any bad intentions, they were more curious and surprised. He is a giant after all. This is almost a legendary existence. Who? At this time, Dory also noticed the movement on the ground. He suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes were immediately locked on where Ron and others were. We mean no harm. We are adventurers who happen to be passing by here. Being locked onto Dory, Ron felt a shock all over his body. Although he was seriously injured, he still felt extremely depressed and uneasy. Thinking of this, Ron quickly said that he meant no harm. Yeah, we have no ill intentions towards you, we are just here out of curiosity. This is the first time we have seen a giant, and it is such a powerful being, so we come here to be friends with you. At this time, Luffy and others also came to their senses and began to express their goodwill. Joke. Being targeted by such a powerful giant, they didn't think they would be able to deal with Dory at this moment if they took action. Is that so? He frowned and glanced at Ron and others. Indeed, these guys are very weak and not enough to pose a threat to themselves. Thinking of this, Dory didn't mean to kill them all. He waved his hand and said, in that case, you can go. We don't have a good impression of humans, and we don't need to be friends with you. Hearing this, Luffy and others immediately lowered their heads in disappointment. After all, they were rejected, which also meant that the possibility of them wanting to communicate with the giant was gone. Thinking of this, they didn't stay any longer and turned around to leave. Wait a moment. At this time, Ron spoke quietly. Immediately afterwards, he jumped up and arrived at a big tree in the area in front of Dory. After barely being able to let him see him, Ron said without any nonsense, Dory, I want to make a deal with you. Ron. Seeing this situation, Luffy 997 and others on the ground were stunned. Unexpectedly, Ron actually stepped forward and even offered to make a deal with him. To be honest, they were extremely nervous inside. After all, Dory had just said that they were not allowed to disturb him. If he was angered, then. Who are you? How do you know my name? As expected, Dory's face suddenly became ugly at this moment. A pair of eyes stared fixedly at Ron, and a sense of murder gradually began to flow out of his body. Not good. Feeling the murderous intent of the other party, Ron groaned secretly in his heart. But he didn't care so much at the moment. After taking a deep breath, he immediately said, I know what the situation is between you and Brogy. I also know that both of you are afraid that the other will be punished by death when he returns. In this case, I am willing to help you negotiate. After so many years, there is no need for you to worry about returning to the Giant Kingdom. The most important thing is that I know that you were deceived by Big Mom to reveal the sword skills of the giants. I can promise you that as long as I am strong enough, I will help you kill Big Mom. Having said this, Ron took a deep breath and tried to calm down. At this point, he can only choose to take the wrong path. In this case, he must get help from two people. It's not that he really planned on the sword skills of the two. After all, his next major is to draw the sword and slash, and combined with the super speed force mode, the other sword skills have no value. But Dory and Brogy are giants and members of the former giant pirates, so they will definitely hockey. The next goal is to deal with Crocodile, as the latter will be easily dealt with. Therefore, it is particularly important to learn hockey, or at least master hockey's cultivation method. What do you want? After a short silence, Dory's murderous intent gradually subsided, and then he stared at Ron and asked. He didn't care if Ron really had the ability to kill Big Mom. I don't care if I can return to the Giant Kingdom. As Ron said, the thing he cares about is Brogy, Appa. The two of them met to fight here, and he wanted to prevent the other party from going back to die. Because of this, he persisted in fighting Brogy for so many years, but he did not use his full strength. If Ron can really convince Brogy to give up the idea of going back, that will definitely be the best news for him. It's done. Hearing this, Ron breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that he had made the right bet. Although the misunderstanding between the two parties was not resolved due to injury as in the original work, both Brogy and Dory cared about each other extremely deeply. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, Two-color hockey training method. I want you to master the two-color hockey training method. Of course, as a great swordsman, it would be great if you could give some advice on my companion's sword practice. How to practice hockey? What is hockey? Hearing this, Luffy and others on the ground looked at each other. I have no idea what Ron needs, and I even feel doubtful and confused from the bottom of my heart. Zoro was the only one excited. He didn't know what hockey was, but there was no doubt that Ron's request was to take him with him. He even wanted to ask the giant swordsman to give him some advice. This was simply, no, I'm not a great swordsman. However, at this moment, Dory also shook his head and said, Brgy and I are just creating projects. If we want to become great swordsmen, we don't have the qualifications. The reason why we look as good as the great swordsman is because we are both giants. With a raised brow, Ron's eyes flashed with surprise. These two people were actually just swordsmen, which really shocked him. After all, the sword energy that stood out before divided the sea. If it is not a great swordsman, it can be seen how terrifying the secret skills of the giants are. But I can also give you the two-color hockey training method you need. Before Ron could recover, Dory spoke quietly, real. Hearing this, Ron's body trembled. He didn't care to think about the swordsman and the great swordsman, and stared at Dory with piercing eyes at the moment, his eyes full of excitement. After all, Once he really gets the two-color hockey training method, he can complete the training ahead of time. As long as you can really master all of this, it will be much easier to deal with Crocodile, and you won't really have no resistance when facing the strong Logia. But, before Ron could speak, Dory said again, you have to make Brogy promise not to go back first. As long as he agrees to this, I will give you the two-color hockey training method you need. Obviously, although Dory was moved, he did not choose to believe it directly. Good, nodding, Ron did not hesitate at this moment. After all, compared to the two-color hockey training method, everything else is unimportant. And as a time traveler, he knew better that the two of them had such thoughts about each other. It's just that they were worried about each other's face, so they didn't tell the story, and even made an agreement that the winner must be decided. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, I will do this now. But Dory, can my partner stay with you for a while? They have no ill intentions towards you, they are just curious about seeing a giant for the first time, and they have no ill intentions towards you. Hearing this, Dory glanced at Luffy and others on the ground, who were staring at him with bright eyes, and after a little pondering, he agreed. He really didn't sense any malice from Luffy and others. The most important thing is that if Ron can really accomplish this, he can be said to be his friend and benefactor. Thinking of this, Dory said directly, in that case, just don't disturb me. Thank you. Hearing this, Ron smiled even more. Knowing that Dory had agreed, he returned to the area where Luffy and others were. Ron. At this time, Luffy and others quickly stepped forward. After arriving at Ron's side, they asked with great curiosity, what is the two-color hockey training method you asked for? Ron, what is this hockey you are talking about? Faced with the inquiry, Ron had no intention of hiding it at this moment, and directly explained. The so-called hockey is an extremely powerful means of fighting enemies, and it is also a skill that only the strong can practice in the true sense. This is information I accidentally got from Marine. Hockey is divided into 3 types, Conqueror's hockey, observation hockey and armament hockey. Among them, Conqueror's hockey cannot be cultivated one day after tomorrow. He is a being who is born only one among millions of people. He is a man who is destined to become a king. Observation hockey is an extremely powerful technique. It can predict the opponent's attack trajectory, route and actions in advance to avoid it. It can even truly predict the future after reaching a high level. The last armament hockey, this is the means we all desperately lack now. At this point, Ron paused. After giving Luffy and others some time to accept, he continued. Armament hockey is a pass that truly belongs to the strong. Once mastered, you can cover yourself with hockey, strengthen your defense and attack power, and even, it can be covered on blades and bullets. Once armament hockey is attached, the elementalization of Logia Devil Fruit is meaningless, unless the latter detects that your attack is elementalized in advance, otherwise it will cause direct damage once it is hit. It can be said that once we master armament hockey, we will truly have the ability to threaten Logia, including when dealing with natural conditions, and we will not be as tricky and embarrassed as before. Gouda hearing this, Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji all couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Without him, if this is the case, then armament hockey will be really useful to them. Extremely huge. Especially after their previous results were on par with Smoker, this method is even more exciting. Although they had suffered 3 defeats before, everyone knew what the actual situation was. Luffy and Zoro were able to tie with each other only after they teamed up. This shows that the gap is so huge. If you learn armament hockey, you don't need to find the seawater by tricks, and you can truly fight with Logia users like Smoker. Very good, there is such a magical existence. If this is true, armament hockey is really extremely important to us. For a moment, Luffy and others spoke one after another, their eyes full of excitement and anticipation. Ron, wouldn't I be restrained? At this time, Nami also spoke with some sadness. After all, according to what Ron said, the weapon color is simply Logia's elemental attack method, which is not a good thing. No need to worry. Hearing this, Ron smiled lightly, looked at Nami and said, don't forget what I just said about observation hockey. You can definitely practice it. If your own knowledge reaches a higher level, you can activate elementalization before the opponent attacks you, even if it covers armament hockey. It makes no sense either. The most important thing is that if you can cultivate your vision to the point where you can foresee the future, then the other party's attack will not pose any threat to you. That's it. Nodding thoughtfully, Nami's expression improved a little. As Ron said, as long as you elementalize in advance, there is nothing you can do about the weapon color. In the final analysis, this is hockey's mutual development and mutual restraint. Although I feel sorry for Logia's elementalization, there is no doubt that hockey is indeed a method that needs to be mastered and practiced. Alright. Seeing that there were no problems with the others, Ron didn't intend to stay any longer. He clapped his hands and said, you guys can talk to Dory here. I'm going to find Brogy. After handling this matter as soon as possible, get hockey's training method first. After saying that, he didn't linger, turned around and headed towards Brogy. Seeing this, Luffy and others did not stop him, but curiously walked toward Dory not far away. Especially Zoro. Although Dory was not a great swordsman, the fact that the swordsman could perform such terrifying slashes still made him feel awe and curiosity, and he immediately stepped forward to ask Dory about it. Kendo Problem. Chapter 75 The Baroque Work Company Attacks, Brogy's Shocking Attack. On the other end, Ron was speeding rapidly. Not long after, he arrived at Brogy's area. Looking at it, Brogy's situation is almost the same as Dory's. At this moment, they are all sitting in front of a bonfire, fully recovering from their wounds. In order not to fight with him as soon as possible, the two of them did not even try to recover after being injured, did not use drugs, and did not even use the most basic bandaging. It's really a close connection, but it just so happens that it means that the setting of the original work has not been destroyed. In this way, if I act as a lobbyist and talk it out completely, the conflict between the two people will completely disappear. I can also take this opportunity to obtain the two-color hockey training method. The corner of Ron's mouth raised, and with a thought, Ron stepped on Moonwalk and appeared directly in the area in front of Brogy and said, "Brogy. Who are you?" Seeing Ron's appearance, Brogy frowned slightly, looking a little unkind. As a being who was deceived by Big Mom in the past, Brogy is distrustful and even hostile towards human beings. Now that Ron appeared here, he immediately grasped the knife beside him, as if he was ready to take action at any time. "Don't do it." Seeing this, Ron's expression froze and he quickly shouted, "I'm not here to cause trouble for you. I'm not here to attack you either. I just came from Dory and I have something to discuss with you." Dory. Hearing this, Brogy looked at Ron with even more suspicion. After all, he knew very well that Dory, like himself, was extremely hostile to human existence and logically should not have anything to do with humans. But looking at Ron's vow, Brogy was a little confused as to what the situation was. After pondering for a while, Brogy then spoke, "Then why did you come here?" Seeing this, Ron breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Brogy doesn't do anything, that's a good thing. Without hesitation, Ron said directly, "That's right, I'm here to clear up the misunderstanding between you two. Why? Brgy, you may not know that Dory doesn't want to fight you, and when he fights you, he leaves a lot of tricks unused. It's not because he looks down on you, but because he doesn't want to defeat you, nor does he want you to go back to the kingdom of the Chinese to die." As soon as these words came out, Brogy's pupils shrank. Not for anything else, because Ron's words shocked his heart. Not only was Dory hiding his strength like him, but the most important thing was that the latter had the same idea as him, not wanting the other party to go back and die after failure. For a moment, Brogy's heart was complicated, and his eyes were full of strong doubts. "Are you serious about what you said?" Dory really said that?" "Yes." Nodding, Ron raised the corner of his mouth and said, "If it wasn't true, then I wouldn't be here. Because we all saw the scene of the duel between you before, and everyone can see that you are holding back each other. So I infer that you don't want the latter to lose and go back to die, so that the tie will always be maintained. Dory cares about your existence, and you also care about Dory's existence. So, I want to help you resolve this matter. There is no need to continue fighting each other. Life is short, and you can live together in Little Garden. So many years have passed, and the giants have not caused any trouble for you. This means that there is no intention to pursue the matter that year, or that you workers have been occupied by them. Under such circumstances, as long as you don't take the initiative to go out to sea to make trouble, there will be no problem at all and you can continue to live here." Rumble. Rumble. Just as Ron was talking, suddenly there was a roar in the distant area. Immediately afterwards, you can see explosions resounding in the direction of Dory and others, and fire shooting into the sky. It seems that someone is fighting in that area. What's the situation? Is there an invasion? With a raised brow, Ron's face suddenly turned ugly, and he flew into the sky at a quick pace. Looking down into the distance, he could vaguely see that the area where the battle was taking place was actually the area where Dory was. For a moment, Ron was a little angry. "I am about to succeed. Is this the blind guy who is here to cause trouble?" Burning with anger, Ron immediately floated down to the ground and said, "Brogy, someone invaded Shalwayu. The target should be Dory. I won't waste time here, I will go first. Dory's injury is very serious and it will be difficult to recover in a short time. If the intruder is too strong, that will be the most dangerous." After saying that, Ron didn't linger and turned into a streak of light and flew away into the distance. Dory. At the same time, Rocky has also come to his senses. Glancing at Ron who was leaving, he was also deeply touched. Although he didn't know who was attacking, it was about Dory's life and death. How could he remain indifferent? Almost instantly, Brogy took off his clothes and bandaged his wounds. Then, he stood up, picked up the knife and walked forward. Soon, Ron had returned to Dory's area. It can be seen that a large number of pirates appear here at this moment. Their target is undoubtedly Dory, but at this moment they are also blocked by Luffy and others. Among this group of people, Ron even saw many members and cadres from the Baroque Working Society. The leader among them is surprisingly Mr. 3, it's actually them. Seeing this scene, Ron's face suddenly became extremely ugly. In the original work, it was Mr. 5 and Miss Valentine who came here. But these two men had been killed by Ron at Whiskey Peak before. I thought that people from Baroque Works would not come here again, but I didn't expect that it would happen anyway. There were even a lot of people coming, and the leader was that Paramecia Candle Fruit Power user M3. It seems that even if I change some things, the underlying trend cannot be changed. The Baroque Company, Limited has to deal with the giant, and it will continue to happen even without Miss Valentine. Court death. Thinking of this, Ron's murderous intention became even stronger. After all, he finally had to convince Brogy, and soon the two of them would be reconciled, and his two-color hockey training method would be available. Now that it was actually destroyed by M3's men, how could he remain indifferent? The next second, Ron's figure appeared within the battlefield. Discharge 10 million volts. Almost instantly, Ron raised his hand, aimed at the members of the Baroque working club below, and launched an attack. In an instant, dark blue lightning swept out. Under Ron's control, the dark blue lightning fell directly into the crowd, even affecting those people. Ah, DBE. For a time, a steady stream of screams resounded. A discharge of tens of millions of volts is extremely destructive and lethal. This also caused the ordinary members of the Baroque working group to be completely unable to resist. They fell to the ground one by one, and even if they didn't die, they were already disabled. The only pity is that he is Paramecia. Although a discharge of tens of millions of volts was exerted, the range was only about 10 meters, which was completely unable to achieve the true large-scale destruction like Logia. Ron. Seeing this, Luffy and others who were fighting with Mr. B and others also became energetic. I never expected that Ron would come back so soon. And under such circumstances, with Ron's suppression, those guys couldn't get close to the weak Dory. Rubber bazooka. Almost instantly, Luffy became angry. With no worries anymore, he raised his hands and attacked Mr. 3 without hesitation. At the same time, Zoro and Sanji were also fighting with the cadres of the Baroque working group. Usopp and Nami set up a defense line next to Dory, using flaming clouds to block the approach of other marines. Usopp kept sniping at the enemy. Guys from Baroque Works, you deserve to die. At this time, Ron had already floated to the ground and arrived at the venue. After glancing at the densely packed pirate figures around him, Ron immediately pulled out the snow from his waist and walked away. Speed Force open. With a low growl, Ron immediately activated the speed calendar. Although not as good as the Super Speed Force, with the blessing of the Speed Force, Ron's own speed has increased by more than 7 or 8 times. Under such circumstances, Ron's figure was like lightning passing through the crowd, and the electric light danced and bloomed with cold light. The snow in his hand turned into the sickle in Shinigami's hand at this moment, frantically harvesting the lives of every member of the Baroque Work Club. Zero, please give me flowers, Obe. For a time, screams resounded continuously. As more and more companions died, the members of the surrounding Baroque working society also panicked. He never expected that Ron would be so terrible with Yamato. The most important thing was that Ron's attack was so fast that it was impossible for them to resist it. Under such circumstances, the members of the Baroque working group were also afraid, and even began to gradually retreat, not daring to approach Ron at all. Many people even picked up their guns and pointed them at Ron and pulled the trigger. Bang bang bang. In an instant, countless bullets swept out. Unfortunately, Ron's figure had disappeared before those bullets even came close. This also resulted in all their attacks failing, and Ron broke into the crowd again and continued to harvest lives. Damn it, I won't fight, this guy is a monster. He is worthy of being a supernova with a bounty of 300 million belly, he is really too powerful. Even MR3 is no match for him. Let's leave quickly, otherwise we will die here today. As he spoke, a large number of figures retreated and quickly fled towards the outer area. Zero joke. In the face of a murderous god like Ron, no one is willing to take personal risks, and no one is willing to continue to be an enemy of a monster like Ron. Want to leave? However, will Ron let them escape? Just because these guys messed up after revealing his plan, he was completely furious at the moment. Almost instantly, Ron accelerated to give chase. Kid, get out of the way. Suddenly, a loud shout resounded. The next second, Ron felt a crisis coming, and without hesitation activated the Super Speed Force, speeding up his speed dozens of times, and quickly retreated to the area where the Straw Hat Pirates and others were. At this moment, Brogy could be seen walking forward from the trees not far away. With every step he gets closer, the aura on his body will grow. Soon, he had arrived at the venue, his eyes were locked on the pirates who were about to escape, and he directly raised the knife in his hand and shouted, "If you dare to attack Dory, you will all be punished." 3T. The secret skill of the giant's powerful country. In an instant, Brogy raised the knife in his hand, pointed it at the area where the pirates were escaping, and swung it. The next second, the sword light illuminated the sky, directly lighting up the night. At this moment, the huge sword energy fell, immediately flooding the direction in which the group of pirates were escaping. Rumble rumble, a deafening roar resounded, and a bottomless sword mark was directly cut out of the island, with countless seawater surging towards it. Within the area of this gap, the pirates from the Baroque Company, Limited are all dead, and there is not even the slightest possibility of survival. This scene immediately frightened Mr. 3, Miss Golden Week, Miss Merry Christmas and others who were fighting against Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. Terrible. Brogy's knife was really terrifying. Although it was not aimed at him and others, it still made them all feel the danger of death. At this moment, their inner emotions collapsed. I never expected that I would encounter the Straw Hat Pirates in Lil Garden, and I never expected that the two giants here would be so terrifying. Brogy was even still injured, but he was able to easily perform that terrifying slash. How terrifying and shocking this was. For a time, their inner emotions were completely unbearable. Withdraw. Get out of here. Operation Little Garden cancelled. These two guys are too scary and cannot be compared to us. Almost instantly, Mr. 3 retreated without hesitation. As the leader of this operation, his retreat also made Miss Golden Week and others who were sluggish on the side also wake up from their dreams. Without any hesitation, they retreated quickly and scattered in all directions, fearing that they would be attacked by Brogy's slash again if they gathered together. Chapter 76. The Fleeing Baroque Cooperative, Two-Colored Hockey's training method is obtained. Want to leave? Seeing this, Ron stepped forward to continue the pursuit. After all, to be honest, these guys from Baroque Works are almost all demon fruit power. Although it is not certain that after killing the opponent, he will be reborn directly on the fruit next to him, there is still a certain probability. Ron, okay. However, before Ron could continue his pursuit, Luffy on the side spoke first. Let's take a look at Dory's injury first. Injury? With a raised brow, Ron's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Was Dory injured, or was it caused by those guys at Baroque Works? This was a bit unbelievable no matter how you looked at it, and even made him feel unbelievable. After all, he knew very well the level of MR3 and others. Almost all of them have school-level combat capabilities, and even with the addition of Devil Fruit, it is impossible to exert much more strength than the Commodore. But now? How could it possibly cause harm to Dory? Even if he had been injured, the gap between the giant's physique and absolute strength couldn't be easily erased. Thinking of this, Ron stopped chasing and came to Luffy and others' side. Immediately afterwards, a group of people moved forward rapidly and soon arrived at Dory's location. Looking around, Dory was indeed injured at this moment. In the area around his waist, a huge gap actually appeared at this moment. It was dripping with blood at the moment and looked extremely bad. How can it be? Seeing this scene, Ron's eyes were full of suspicion. How could the MR3 and others we saw earlier cause such huge harm to Dory? This is simply unbelievable, even unbelievable. 200 is a bald man. At this time, Zoro on the side stepped forward and said with an ugly expression, "That guy fought hard enough to turn his arm into a blade. And his blade cutting ability was extremely terrifying. We didn't notice it at the time. We didn't notice it until Dory was attacked by surprise. The guy was knocked out by Dory, but the rest of the people came over and killed him. We didn't care about treating Dory's injuries and had to go and stop the people from Baroque Works." I see. Hearing this, Ron suddenly understood. If that were the case, then all this would make sense. The bald man who can turn his hands into blades, isn't this MR1? This guy is the leader of the Baroque working group and is even Crocodile's confidant. In a sense, M1 is no exception even at the level of deputy captain, and cannot be compared with other officers. In addition, what he ate was the Paramecia quick slash fruit. Under such circumstances, his sneak attack would really be enough to pose a threat to Dory, and even cause such serious injuries. Dory, at this moment, Brogy hurriedly walked forward. After seeing the figure lying there with a pale face and a huge gash on his waist, everyone was in panic. He also didn't expect that someone would take advantage of his battle with Dory. If something really happened to Dory, Brogy wouldn't know how to deal with such a thing. For a moment, Brogy stood there blankly, not knowing what to do. Brogy. Seeing this situation, Ron's eyes flashed with helplessness. After jumping to the area in front of them, he immediately said, "You have lived in Little Garden for so long. Do you know where there are healing herbs? Dory's wound is very serious and requires medicine to truly treat it. We are bandaging it now to slow the spread of its injuries." Drug. Herbs. I know. Hearing this, Brogy woke up from a dream. Without any hesitation, he turned around and said, "You guys wait here. I'm going to collect the medicine now." After saying that, he hurriedly ran towards the distant area. This scene also made the weak Dory couldn't help but speak, his eyes full of emotion and happiness. Obviously, although he was attacked this time and was even injured, if the conflict between the two could be handled well, it would be worthwhile in Dory's opinion. Day 1. A smile appeared on Donghee's face, but it was obvious that he could no longer hold on at this moment, and the injuries added to the injury caused him to pass out. Seeing this situation, Ron and others' expressions also changed. If Dory died, the situation would be extremely bad. Not caring about anything else, Ron acted quickly. He quickly cut off Dory's clothes, turned them into bandages, and then called Luffy and others to help Dory bandage them. About half an hour later, Brogy came back with the medicine. These are almost all herbs, and they are all healing herbs. Unfortunately, Ron and others are not doctors and have no idea what is best. However, in order to ensure Dory's safety, Ron applied all the herbs directly to Dory. After doing all this, Ron, the others, and Brogy sat in a nearby area and waited patiently. After all, they have done what they should do now. The specific situation and the effect will depend on whether Dory can wake up. At the other end, Mr. 3 and others have now left the confines of Little Garden. Taking their boats, they hurried towards the sea. Seeing the ship getting further and further away, the giant inside did not pursue it, which made Mr. 3 and others heave a sigh of relief. Scared me. How could that giant be so powerful? MR1 was knocked away with one blow. I didn't expect that the other giant was so terrifying. Sitting slumped on the ground, Miss Golden Joe said with a frightened face. As soon as these words came out, they immediately aroused the recognition of everyone on the side. Terrible. At that moment, they all felt like they were almost dead. If nothing else, Brogy's slash was really terrifying. The members they took there were 2 businessmen. Although some were defeated, at least 200 people escaped. But what's the result? With just one slash, more than 200 people were already dead, and even the island was split open, forming a huge canyon. Well, the guy didn't chase him out, so we are safe. At this time, MR3 spoke quietly. After looking at Miss Golden Week and others, he slowly said, but the current situation cannot be taken lightly. After all, M1 injured that giant before, and it was even fatal. Once it dies, another giant will probably come out to seek revenge on us. The most important thing for us now is to go back as soon as possible. After finding M1, we can return directly to Alabasta. Only within our territory can we have some sense of security, or we can find the president and hope that his power can compete with that giant. As soon as these words came out, Miss Golden Week and others also nodded. I have to say, MF3's words are true. Even according to his analysis, he and others will be in danger after returning this time. The only hope is to find the president, but if you want to find the president, you must contact MR1. Thinking of this, Miss Golden Week and others did not hesitate, and spoke one after another. I noticed before that the direction in which the M1 was shot was in the southeast area. We are heading directly in that direction now, to find it as soon as possible and return to Alabasta. I will no longer be involved in the little garden matter, and I will not come here even if I have a mission. Those 2 giants are too terrifying. If you encounter them again, you will probably die. As soon as these words came out, they immediately aroused everyone's approval. Including MR3 is no exception. At that moment, they were all completely frightened by Brogy. And the Straw Hat Pirates, these guys must not let them go. At this moment, Ms. Merry Christmas quietly spoke. Thinking of the Straw Hat Pirates who had stopped her and others before, and Ron who came and started killing them later, there was a burst of anger and murderous intent in her eyes. But her words also made Mr. 3 and others furious. If it weren't for the Straw Hat Pirates' obstruction, they might have killed the seriously injured Dory and completed part of their mission. It was even possible to evacuate before Brogy arrived, without causing such huge damage. More than 300 elites. Even the wealthy Baroque Company, Limited would be unable to replenish such elites in a short period of time. Thinking of this, MR3 and others also said, the Straw Hat Pirates deserve to die. Then Zoro, I will definitely kill him, and that Sanji, the perverted cook, I must kill him. That Straw Hat boy is not a good guy, he actually stopped me, I must make him pay the price. Although he yelled insults, even towards Usopp, Nami was full of hatred and wanted to kill him with 1,000 knives. But at this moment, Mr. 3 and others also made a tacit understanding and did not choose to mention Ron. From the previous situation alone, everyone could see how powerful Ron was and that he and others could not be provoked at all. If you say something harsh at this time and are believed by others to be true, then won't you have to die when you face Ron in the future? In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Early on the 4th day, Dory finally woke up from the coma. When he opened his eyes, he immediately sat up from the ground, and a violent aura came out of his body. Obviously, he had thought about what happened the night before. Woke up. Dory wakes up, great, and woke up. However, at this moment, Ron and others also breathed a sigh of relief. Especially Luffy and Usopp celebrated right there. Also smiling was Ron. It's not because Dory regained consciousness, but because when he regained consciousness, his mission was completed. This also means that the agreement reached by both parties is completed, and he will immediately be able to obtain the 2-color hockey practice method that he has longed for. Brogy. By this time, Dory had calmed down. Knowing that the previous matter was over, his eyes did not pause too much on the Straw Hat Pirates, but looked straight at them. He looked at Brogy who was sitting there not far away and said, I plan to settle here, what about you? At this moment, Dory was extremely free and easy. It seemed that because of what happened before, he suddenly opened his eyes a lot. Of course I wanted to. Hearing this, the corners of Brogy's mouth rose. He was extremely happy at Dory's words. After all, he had some doubts when Ron said it before, but now that Dory has said it, it also means that it is impossible to lie. For a moment, Brogy breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they don't continue to fight, the misunderstandings and conflicts between them will completely disappear. Thinking of this, Brogy suddenly laughed and said, after your injury is healed, we will build a shelter together and completely live in Shalwayu. Good. Hearing this, Dory also smiled. He knew that Ron's matter was settled. Brogy really understands himself and is willing to stay here instead of going back to die. Thinking of this, Dory's smile became even brighter. Ron. Immediately afterwards, Xi Li's 2.8 eyes looked at Ron on the ground. After pondering for a while, he took out a booklet from his arms and threw it to Ron and said, this is the 2-color hockey training method you need. I will give it to you now. By the way, There's also the special haki we got in the past, the training method of emission haki. After your armament haki reaches an advanced level, you can try to learn the training of Naruto haki. Emission haki. His pupils shrank, and Ron's breathing became rapid. After all, this is emission haki. In a sense, flow connection is a weaker version of Conqueror's entanglement. And once emission haki is mastered, demon fruit power can completely ignore the existence of seastone handcuffs and the like, and continuously reduce the weaknesses of an esper in a true sense. Thank you very much. Without hesitation, Ron took the manual with haki written on it and bowed deeply to Dory. Thank you Dory. Dory, thank you. At the same time, Luffy and others also expressed their gratitude. Ron has already talked about the importance of haki before, and they also know very well that this is a cultivation method that is difficult to obtain in the Grand Line, and it is something that many people will not teach. Now Dory is given to Ron, which means it is handed over to the Straw Hat Pirates. They can also use the existence of the manual to practice the so-called haki and become stronger, which is an extremely huge favor. Especially Luffy and Zoro. They can't wait to see armament haki at this moment. If they can complete the training, then they really don't need to be afraid of Logia's opponents. Chapter 77 Cultivation Observation Haki. Nami fell ill, bloodline awakened? Successfully obtained the two-color haki training method. Ron and his friends didn't bother Dory and Brogy. After a group of people had a meal with Brogy and Dory, they returned directly to the Mary. Immediately afterwards, they left Little Garden on the Mary and began to drive in the direction of Alabasta where the Eternal Pointer pointed. Ron, it's so difficult to practice this kind of chi. On the deck, Ron, Luffy and others gathered together. Looking at the two-color haki training method recorded in the manual, everyone frowned. Especially Luffy. He tried several times but had no clue. It is indeed difficult. Hearing this, Ron also nodded. They have all read the two-color haki's training method, and Ron has memorized it. But it is undeniable that the cultivation of this thing is extremely difficult. To practice seeing, hearing, and color requires absolutely keen perception. In addition to acquired learning, this thing also requires talent. As for armament haki, this is something that everyone can practice, but it also depends on your physical fitness and even your own strength. According to what is recorded in the manual, observation haki can comprehend and even master even those with a school-level strength. But armament haki is also different. If you want to master armament haki, you must at least reach the general level. Even if it is demon fruit power, it is extremely difficult to master it at the school level. The most important thing is that armament haki is a means of operating one's own special energy, which also makes it very difficult to cultivate it without anyone's guidance, and even. Just remember it first. After coming back to his senses, Ron looked at Luffy and others and said, first remember the two-color haki's training method, and we will practice it in the future when our own situation is sufficient. Otherwise, if one's own strength is insufficient, there will be no possibility of cultivating them. The most important thing is that this two-color chamber energy is the standard means to become a top powerhouse. As soon as these words came out, they immediately aroused the recognition of Luffy and others. Although it cannot be practiced, it is necessary to remember it first. As Ron said, two-color haki is the standard equipment for the future strong players. If they don't know how to do it, they will probably be eliminated by then. This is not what they want to see. Immediately, the group of people did not hesitate and began to memorize silently. Usopp, come and help me practice. Seeing everyone memorizing the training contents of double-color haki, Ron also put the manual away. Immediately afterwards, his eyes also looked at Usopp. His situation is different from Luffy and others. They need to reach at least the general level before they can practice the two-color haki, but Ron can also do it in advance. As a time traveler, his soul perception is stronger, and because of the thousand-year dragon, he has an undead dragon body and his physical strength is also higher than the same level. Under such circumstances, Ron planned to start practicing. Regardless of whether he could succeed or not, he still had to do it. Ron, what do you practice? Ron, do you want to practice haki? Hearing this, Usopp and others looked at Ron in astonishment and asked. After all, they have already tried it, and this thing is not something they can practice in a short time. But now Ron actually wants to practice this, yes. Nodding, Ron smiled calmly and said, armed colors may be a lot more difficult to play, and they require actual combat experience to perfect. But this experience and color are also different. I should have the possibility and certainty of succeeding in cultivation. And I also know a way to practice seeing and hearing color. Yeah? Hearing this, Luffy and others immediately became interested. After looking at each other, a group of people also stood up from the ground and asked, what can I do? What if you practice seeing and hearing color? Obviously, they are all ready to make a move at this moment. Especially Luffy and Zoro. After all, apart from Ron, both of them are also at the school level. If Ron can practice, doesn't that mean it's possible for them too? No rush, with a calm smile, Ron looked at G, and said seriously, I'm not sure if it's possible. Luffy can practice with me, but Zoro you don't have to. You have just become a swordsman, and now is the time for you to see rapid progress. If you are distracted from practicing the color of knowledge at this time, it will not be good news for you. What you need to do now is to improve your swordsmanship as soon as possible, at least to reach the level of an intermediate swordsman first. Hearing this, Zoro nodded. He also knew this. Although hockey is indeed tempting, he also understands that his goal is swordsmanship and becoming the world's greatest swordsman. I see. After agreeing, Zoro turned around and walked aside and started practicing around the knife. Then I'll go practice too. Seeing this, Sanji also stood up and said with a solemn expression. Although it is a bit difficult, I will definitely break the bottleneck and reach school-level strength as soon as possible. After saying that, he didn't stay any longer and went straight to the side area to start exercising his body and kicking skills. Ron, how do we practice next? As a few people left, Luffy couldn't wait to ask. Simple. Hearing this, Ron smiled indifferently, looked at Usopp and said, the next step in cultivation will require Usopp's help. The practice of seeing, hearing, and color is to train one's own perception. If this is the case, then Usopp's sniping is a very good way to temper it for us. And with the help of our training, Usopp can also improve his sniper skills. It can be said that he can achieve multiple goals with one stone. Upon hearing this, Luffy and Usopp's eyes lit up. After all, this kind of exercise is indeed interesting. Then, Luffy and Usopp said, then let's start now. Ron, what do we do next? Simple. With a laugh, Ron took out the black straps to cover his eyes, then turned to look in the direction of Usopp and said, Usopp, Luffy and I are in the bow area, you go to the stern area to snipe us. Don't have any scruples, just launch an attack directly on our vital points. Only in this way can we become stronger. Hearing this, Usopp nodded. He glanced at Ron and Luffy, then turned around and walked towards the area behind. As he retreated, Luffy followed suit and covered his eyes. Here we go, accompanied by a low drink from Usopp. The next second, countless piercing sounds resounded. Immediately afterwards, Ron and Luffy were exposed to Usopp's sniper range. Bang bang bang. There were constant noises, and both Luffy and Ron were hit by bullets fired by Usopp. Although it is not a very powerful bullet, it still hurts when it hits the body without any defense. For a moment, Ron was fully focused, constantly trying to sense and avoid. On the contrary, it was Luffy on the side, because bullets didn't have much power against him as a rubber. This also caused him to stand there at a loss. No, I don't feel anything at all. After a while, Luffy took off his blindfold, walked to the side helplessly and said, Usopp, just train on Ron. I didn't even feel it and I couldn't avoid it. Speaking of this, Luffy looked helpless. In response, Ron shrugged. Luffy in the original book had Rayleigh's personal guidance. With a stick attack mixed with armament hockey, Luffy's potential was developed when he was in pain. But the current Usopp is obviously unable to do this. Without pain and pressure, Luffy cannot enter the state at all. Of course, the fake teacher is Rayleigh, and the real teacher is actually Katakuri. After all, he was the man who made Luffy understand the future in one battle. Although it was not very stable, his teaching power was undoubtedly powerful. Good. After agreeing, Usopp was not attacking Luffy, but picked up his own bullets and attacked Ron continuously. Ron did not hesitate at this moment and continued to start his own practice. Under such circumstances, time flies by. In the blink of an eye, a group of people had been traveling on the sea for about half a month. Nami, on this day, Luffy's exclamation broke the state of cultivation on the ship. Ron took off his blindfold and quickly came to the cabin. It can be seen that Nami actually has a cold and a fever at this moment, and he is lying there extremely weak. At this time, there was heavy snowfall outside, the entire sky and sea began to turn white, and the temperature dropped rapidly. Still have a cold? It seems like this place is not far from the Drum Kingdom. Seeing this, Ron's eyes narrowed slightly. If nothing else, they had already approached the scope of the Drum Kingdom. Nami, as a being with special perception, directly causes her body to be able to sense the temperature and weather. Because of this, she sensed the cold in advance and fell ill unexpectedly. But because of this, Ron was also a little confused. After all, Nami had eaten devil fruit. Even though he is Logia, his physical fitness has also been greatly improved. Logically speaking, it is impossible for Nami to fall ill just because of a small temperature change. Could it be that the bloodline is awakening? Suddenly, an idea came to Ron's mind. He remembered that it seemed to be mentioned in the original book that after the Kingdom of the Drum, Nami began to master more powerful sailing talents, and even the clothes she wore were gradually reduced, allowing more skin to be exposed to sense changes in the weather. If this is the case, it is likely to come from the awakening of the bloodline in Nami's body. But Ron doesn't know what her bloodline is, and Nami's identity in her previous life has not been truly announced. But there are two inferences that Ron strongly agrees with. The first inference is that Nami is the reincarnation of Uranus, which is why Shirahoshi, a Poseidon, expressed his affection for her at the first sight. The second inference is that Nami is a hybrid of mermaid and human. According to the setting of the original work, mermaids and humans can give birth to ordinary human children, and such children may also awaken the mermaid bloodline when they grow up. Otherwise, if so, why did the dragon pirates recognize Nami when they invaded Orange Island, and why did they even let 457 pass the people of Kokoja village because of an agreement with Nami? But no matter which one it is, There is no doubt that this moment is crucial for Nami. As long as Nami is cured at this moment, the blood in her body will be awakened. By then, her navigation talent will be enhanced, and her cultivation talent may even increase. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, "Let Nami drink some hot water first, and then put some hot towels on her." The current situation is not optimistic because Nami is ill. We must find an island and land as soon as possible to find a doctor to treat her. Good. Hearing this, Luffy and others also nodded. Immediately afterwards, a group of people started to get busy. "I'm going to make some ginger soup for Miss Nami." Sanji also turned around and left immediately, not a doctor though. But as a chef, he still knows some methods that can alleviate the disease. Half an hour later, Nami's condition gradually improved. But her body temperature was still very high at the moment, and she was still in a coma. Rumble. Rumble. Under such circumstances, a roar suddenly sounded. Immediately afterwards, the Mary shook violently. With the rolling waves, the Mary was directly lifted off. What's the situation? Is there an attack? Immediately, the expressions of Luffy and others change. Sanji, Usopp, you stay and take care of Nami. Without saying a word, Ron, Luffy and Zoro walked out of the cabin directly. And Sanji and Usopp didn't refuse. After all, protecting Nami is the most important thing if she might be attacked. Soon, Ron and the three came to the deck. Looking around, you can see a huge pirate ship appearing in the area not far away. And at this moment, countless hooks flew out from the pirate ship and landed directly on the Mary, limiting the possibility of the Mary leaving or escaping. Pirate. Seeing this scene, Luffy and Zoro looked ugly. It's not good for Nami that these guys are attacking at this time. Because of this, the anger in their hearts is also extremely huge. It's them. On the contrary, Ron was thoughtful at the moment. White Iron King. The pirate ship in front of you is the Munch Munch fruit user, Wapple. It was also mentioned in the original work, but he didn't expect that Nami would meet these guys not long after she fell ill. For a moment, Ron's eyes flashed with murderous intent, and he murmured, "Paramecia Chichi fruit. This is also a top-notch Paramecia devil fruit. If I can get it, then maybe." Chapter 78 Kill Wapple and Kill the Pirates. For Wapol's capabilities, Ron was quite concerned about it, and could even be said to be very approving of it. Paramecia Munch Munch fruit. It can be transformed into any swallowed substance. This substance includes not only physical objects, but also all elements. It can be said that this Munch Munch fruit is an existence similar to dark fruit in Paramecia. If it can be developed properly, the potential of Munch Munch fruit is definitely not inferior to any top-notch devil fruit. Even Blackbeard. Before getting dark fruit, he also had the intention of using Munch Munch fruit as his own ability. It can be seen from this that the value of this Munch Munch fruit is so huge. The only uncertainty is how much hope there is of getting his Munch Munch fruit if Wapple is killed. No matter what the chance is, but now that it's in front of you, you can't miss it. And if these guys show up at this time, they're seeking their own death. At this thought, Ron's eyes burst with murderous intent and he said, "Luffy, Zoro, follow me. There are a lot of these guys, and letting them come to the Mary will definitely cause damage. We will kill them directly and finish them off on their pirate ship." After saying that, Ron jumped up, used Moonwalk and flew towards the Iron King. "Let's go. Let's go too." Seeing this, Luffy and Zoro looked at each other. Without hesitation, both of them jumped up and used Moonwalk to follow Ron. Soon, Ron and the other three arrived at the White Iron King's level. As soon as he floated to the ground, densely packed pirates were already surrounding him. "Kill! Kill them! Kill them!" Almost instantly, the pirates noticed it and without any hesitation, they quickly attacked Ron and the others. Coming. Seeing the person coming, Ron's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Without any hesitation, he directly pulled out Shui Zai from his waist and said, "Luffy, Ron, don't stay here. A group of pirates who have done many evil things, there is no need to show mercy." With that said, Ron jumped out directly, the electric arc jumped, and his figure shuttled rapidly, but in a short period of time, he annihilated all the people in front of him. Seeing this, Luffy and Zoro did not hesitate, they were also furious. After all, when these guys appeared, it affected the Mary. Even Nami, who was in the midst of it, was affected. If it's on weekdays, that's it, but now Nami is ill and is extremely fragile. If something happens to her, it would be unimaginable. And the people who caused all this were the guys in front of them, and even Luffy didn't let them go. Rubber hyphenation point machine gun, rubber Nanta. Ito Ryu Shishigesh, 3 swordsman style 1000 troubled winds. In an instant, Luffy and Zoro also accelerated their killing speed. In just an instant, the pirates present began to die at a speed visible to the naked eye. The screams resounded endlessly, and no one could survive the attacks of Ron and the others, not even the slightest resistance. As time goes by, the number of pirates in the entire pirate ship is rapidly decreasing. "Damn it, stop it." At this moment, an angry voice sounded. Wapol's figure appeared, looking directly at Ron and the other three. After seeing the corpses on the ground, his eyes were filled with endless anger and murderous intent. "Those are all his subordinates, those are all his subordinates. Although he didn't care much about the life and death of this group of people, after being massacred on such a large scale, wouldn't he have fewer subordinates? In an instant, Wapol jumped up to the area inside the stadium, looked at Ron and the other three and said, "Three damn brats, are you looking for death? How dare you make trouble on my ship? You don't want to live anymore." Hearing this, Luffy immediately stepped forward, looked at Wapol and said, "Are you the captain? You were the one who attacked our ship, I'm going to blow you away." For Wapol, Luffy's only thought at the moment was to knock it away. After all, as the captain, there is no doubt that the previous behavior of the White Iron King was under his control. Wait a minute, seeing this, Ron immediately stopped him. "Luffy, leave this guy to me. You and Zoro take care of the rest of the pirates." Joke. Ron wasn't going to let Luffy knock him away. You know, the value of the munch fruit on Wapol is extremely huge. If it was really blown away like this, there would be no possibility of encountering it again, and there would be no possibility of capturing the munch fruit. Therefore, Ron has to take action himself and kill it in a real sense, hoping to take this opportunity to obtain the power of munch fruit. This, opening his mouth, Luffy looked at Ron subconsciously and said in surprise, "Ron, I'm going to kill him myself." Before Luffy could finish speaking, Ron said firmly, "This guy almost hurt Nami, and he can't be solved by just being beaten. Even if I don't take action, it would be Zoro, not you, Luffy." "I see." Hearing this, Luffy immediately lowered his head. He knew what Ron meant. Among the three, only Luffy doesn't kill people casually. He mostly defeats people. The ones who kill decisively in the real sense are Ron and Zoro. Therefore, when Ron wants to kill Wapol, it is indeed not suitable for Luffy to take action. Thinking of this, Luffy did not hesitate, looked to the side and said, "Zoro, let's compete to see who can defeat more people." After saying that, he accelerated suddenly and attacked the pirates on the side. Rubber -point machine gun. Rubber bazooka. Luffy, this is a sneak attack. Seeing this, Zoro was stunned for a moment, then smiled. Without hesitation, he quickly attacked the other pirates. Under the absolute overwhelming strength, those pirates had no resistance at all, and they fell to the ground and died miserably under the attacks of Luffy and Zoro. "Asshole. I told you to stop. You actually dared to take action. You are provoking me." Seeing this, Wapol next to him was furious. Luffy and Zoro's behavior was undoubtedly a slap in his face, which made him feel aggrieved and unhappy from the bottom of his heart. Burning with anger, Wapol directly picked up a knife and swallowed it, and then stepped forward to stop Luffy and Zoro without hesitation. "Your opponent is me." Seeing this situation, Ron's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He knew what Waldo was thinking, but because of this, his eyes at the moment were filled with strong murderous intent. With the thought, Ron's figure appeared in the area in front of Wapol. He waved the snow in his hand and drew his sword and struck Wapol in an instant. Jung flames flew everywhere, and Wapol was knocked away by Ron's knife. He hit the ground hard and traveled more than 10 meters before stopping. Although he is not as strong as Ron, but with the transformation power of munch fruit, he makes himself like a blade, which also makes Ron's attack unable to kill him. Munch fruit, it's really extraordinary. Seeing this, Ron's eyes narrowed slightly. Taking a step forward, the arc around him began to beat. Speed Force -point open. Without any hesitation, Ron disappeared from the spot. The next second, his figure appeared in the area next to Wapol. The arc-wrapped snow walk swung and continuously attacked Wapol's body. "Aboj!" For a time, screams resounded continuously. Although the body turned into a blade-like substance, Ron's attack was not fatal, but the attack containing power and lightning was also extremely powerful. This also resulted in Wapol having no resistance at all. Under Ron's continuous attacks, his entire body was floating in midair. It wasn't that he had mastered the power of flight, but that Ron's attack had already fallen when he was about to fall. This also resulted in his entire being knocked into the air. As time went by, Ron's slashing speed with the knife became faster and stronger, and his strength became stronger and stronger. Even Wapol, who had transformed into a sword body, could no longer hold on. Not enough. Ron was extremely dissatisfied with this. After all, his attack power is still insufficient and he is completely unable to break Wapol's defense, which also makes things extremely troublesome at this moment. Super Speed Force. Taking a deep breath, the arc around Ron's body beat more and more violently. At this time of ultimate, he directly entered the Super Speed Force mode. Under such circumstances, Ron's speed has become blurry. As his figure quickly moves around, the snow in his hand also attacks Wapol in a steady stream. Crack. There was a shattering sound, and Wapol's skin defenses cracked. Immediately afterwards, blood splattered. As Ron's attacks became faster and faster, countless sword marks appeared on Wapol's body. Each sword penetrated deeply into his flesh and blood, and lightning continuously invaded his body, making him wail continuously. This scene directly frightened the pirates on the White Iron King. Luffy and Zoro are too powerful. They had no resistance at all, and even at this moment, their hearts were filled with fear and uneasiness. But under the current circumstances, they have no choice. The only hope is that Wapol can defeat Ron and then rescue them. But what's the result? Wapol's situation is similar to theirs, and he will even have no resistance at all. This scene simply deeply stimulated everyone. After all, Wapol is so pale and feeble, which makes people wonder whether they can survive. Thinking of this, everyone felt a little desperate in their hearts, and couldn't help but exclaimed, "Master Wapol! Lord Wapol, fight back! Lord Wapol, you are a munch fruit user, how could you be beaten so hard that you can't fight back?" Unfortunately, their shouting means nothing. Even though Wapol heard it at this moment, he didn't respond. The ability to refute and even the ability to speak is gone. The power covered by the munch fruit has been completely destroyed, which also caused the pain in his body to be extremely real. Under such circumstances, he wished he could die directly. After all, living was not only not a good thing, but also extremely painful. "Kill me." Under severe pain, Wapol finally collapsed. He endured the pain in his heart with difficulty and looked at Ron in the side area. Obviously, he has completely given up and now just wants to die. He didn't even make the final resistance, and completely took back the power of munch fruit. Interesting. Seeing this, Ron smiled. He knew what Wapol was thinking. After all, the rest of the resistance has no meaning before absolute power. The most important thing is that Ron's attack seems not fatal, but in fact it is murderous. In addition to the previous attacks, Ron even deliberately controlled the intensity of subsequent attacks in order to let Wapol experience the feeling of being cut open. Seeing that Wapol had completely given up, promising money, Ron's inner anger had also calmed down a lot. With a thought in his mind, he took out a few fruits and threw them towards the area where Wapol was, and then swung the snow in his hand and chopped it out. Fulfill you. The next second, the arc was bright. Ron's knife cut off Wapol's head directly. At this point, the pirates around Wapol's death also completely collapsed. Died. Lord Wapol is dead. Run away quickly. For a time, countless whistles sounded. The surviving pirates could no longer hold their nerve and did not dare to face Luffy and Zoro. They turned around and started running away. Many of them even jumped into the sea. Even if he was drowned in the sea, it would be better than dying in the hands of Ron and others. Where to go? None of you guys can leave. Seeing this, Luffy and Zoro let them escape. Almost instantly, they accelerated their attack on the pirates. In an instant, one pirate died, and the number of pirates on the ship also decreased rapidly. No, damn it, no. At the same time, Ron's expression became extremely ugly at this moment. Where Wapol's body was located, there were more than a dozen fruits scattered. But Wapol has been dead for several minutes, but no fruit has been transformed into devil fruit. This also means that his hope of getting munch fruit is gone. For a moment, Ron's eyes were filled with helplessness. No, look at the food in this ship first. Maybe the fruits in the cabin can be transformed into devil fruit. After shaking his head, Ron ignored the wailing pirates and turned around and walked towards the cabin area. Chapter 79. Destroying the Wapol pirates, munch fruit with several twists and turns. However, the reality is also cruel. Ron searched around the cabin and found no devil fruit. This also means that munch fruit does not regenerate on the nearby fruit. That's it. It seems like this thing still depends on luck. After shaking his head, Ron turned around and walked towards the outside world without insisting on anything. There are many things in this cabin, but they are not attractive to Ron. After dealing with these guys, they have to go to the Drum Kingdom as quickly as possible, find Chopper as soon as possible to help Nami treat, and at the same time, smuggle Chopper, the doctor in the original work, into the Straw Hat Pirates. As Ron came out, he could see that the deck was littered with corpses. Although Luffy did not do much after defeating the opponent, Zoro would not let these guys go. One knife at a time, directly harvesting the lives of all those pirates. Ron. When Ron came out, Luffy and Zoro also came forward. After arriving at his side, the two asked curiously, "Where have you been before? What did you just do?" "Nothing." With a calm smile, Ron glanced at the two of them, and then said, "I just went to see if the munch fruit was reborn on this ship. But obviously not, and we don't need to waste any more time. Now that these guys have been dealt with, it's almost time for us to leave. The most important thing is to go to the Drum Kingdom as soon as possible to find a doctor to treat Nami." Good. Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro nodded. They also all know that the current matter cannot be delayed. Nami's condition looks extremely bad, and she needs to be treated as soon as possible. As for devil fruit, to be honest, they didn't care. After all, Wapol had not shown the power of munch fruit before, and it didn't seem to have anything special. Soon, Ron and his team returned to the Mary. After cutting off the connecting rope, Ron looked at the huge white Iron King, raised the knife in his hand and slashed at the area in front, shouting loudly, 50 million volt thunder knife. The next second, a huge lightning sword energy condensed, and under his control, it landed directly on Beidi Zaishin. 430 boom. Rumble. The roar resounded, and the lightning sword energy raged, directly destroying the ship. Countless arcs jumped, and the entire ship cracked at a speed visible to the naked eye. Countless seawater penetrated into the ship along the gaps, and the entire ship cracked at a speed visible to the naked eye, sinking towards the bottom of the sea at a fast speed. Hiss! Seeing this, both Luffy and Zoro couldn't help but gasp. Luffy was surprised by Ron's development of the lightning fruit. Zoro was surprised that Ron was able to slash the lightning sword energy that was not inferior to that of a swordsman. For a moment, both of them looked at Ron in shock and said, "Ron, your development of devil fruit is too powerful." "Yes, with such a huge lightning sword energy, even I cannot perform a comparable slashing attack now." "Ron, your understanding of kendo is too strong." Hearing this, Ron waved his hand and said calmly, "This matter is not too difficult for me. After all, the main thing is the development of devil fruit. In addition to swordsmanship and knowledge, my training during this period of time also focused on developing lightning fruits. Although my lightning fruit will focus on speed, I have also developed the other characteristics of lightning and will not waste them." Hearing this, Luffy was thoughtful. Then, he seemed to think of something and looked at Ron and said, "Ron, I also thought about the third gear before. You see, Dory and Brogy are so powerful, so can I also develop a giant form? I am rubber, so it stands to reason that I can reach a level similar to that of a giant." Certainly, upon hearing this, Ron gave his support without hesitation. To be honest, he feels that once Luffy's third gear is truly perfected, it will be no less than the future fourth gear. It's just that the fourth gear is mainly based on Haki, probably because in the original work, Luffy developed it after learning Haki, and the true power of the third gear was not demonstrated at all. As Luffy said, his third gear is to transform himself into a form similar to a giant. Once it is really completed, the strength of the physical body alone will be no less than that of the giant vice admiral. If on this basis, a fourth gear covering itself is developed. Even if it can't have so many forms, with the blessing of the giant's height and strength, and the blessing of Haki, it's completely a big deal, and it's not a problem for a child to lift a child in one fell swoop. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, "Your idea is very good. If it can really be completed, that blow can contain the power of a giant. Even if he is not a real giant, he is not much inferior. But once you really want to evolve in this direction, then I suggest you take it to the ultimate level in the true sense, so that you can truly reach the point where you can transform into a giant. It's not just a part of the body that gets bigger or smaller." Is this so? Nodding thoughtfully, Luffy had already imagined in his mind the scene of himself transforming into a huge giant like Dory and Brogy. For a moment, his eyes lit up and he said excitedly, "I will definitely finish it. It will definitely be cool to transform into a giant when the time comes." Looking at the interested Luffy, Ron also smiled at this moment. After all, under such circumstances, as long as Luffy is really determined to develop it, he can definitely become a giant. Once he really accomplishes this, even if he doesn't master Haki, he will be able to threaten enemies at Vice Admiral level. Although the fourth gear and awakening in the future are still powerful, it is undeniable that the potential of the third gear is also extremely huge. Alright, the ship matter has been taken care of. Thinking of this, Ron immediately changed his voice and said, "Let's start the ship first and head to the Drum Kingdom as quickly as possible." Good. Good. Hearing this, Zoro and Luffy did not hesitate, followed Ron to the cockpit, and immediately put the Mary into action again, aiming directly in the direction of the Drum Kingdom. "Ron! Luffy! Zoro!" At this moment, two shouts came. Looking through the sound, we can see Sanji and Usopp walking out of the room. At this moment, both of them also showed a smile. After arriving at their location, Sanji said, "Miss Nami has gone to bed. Although it has not improved yet, it is much better than the previous situation." "That's good." Hearing this, Ron and others also breathed a sigh of relief. Nami's symptoms have eased, which is definitely the best news. Thinking of this, Ron immediately said, "In that case, don't disturb Nami's rest. We take turns monitoring the ship, trying to reach the location of the Drum Kingdom as soon as possible." "Good. $7. Hearing this, Sanji and others also nodded. Immediately afterwards, Usopp seemed to have thought of something and stepped forward and said, "By the way, Ron, I picked up a good thing." As he spoke, he took out a special fruit from his arms, and it turned out to be devil fruit. "Is this devil fruit?" With a raised brow, Ron's eyes showed a hint of astonishment. Unexpectedly, a devil fruit actually appeared in Usopp's hand. And looking at the devil, fruit in front of him, Ron felt vaguely familiar for some reason. "Yes." Nodding, Usopp grinned and said, "I was preparing to cut the fruits for Nami, but suddenly one of them turned into a devil fruit. Ron, please see if this is the devil fruit I need. Can it enhance my strength?" As soon as these words came out, Sanji, Zoro and Luffy all turned to look at the devil fruit in Usopp's hand. "I see." At this time, Ron's energy perked up, and he looked surprised as he said, "Paramisha munch munch fruit. I didn't expect that I would be reborn in your hands, Usopp, after searching for so long on that ship and finding nothing." At this moment, Ron had to be convinced. This is the protagonist group, and all kinds of outrageous things can happen naturally. Especially Usopp. This is definitely second only to Luffy in terms of luck in the Straw Hats. Now he has the munch munch fruit in his hand, If it weren't for the fact that he is a sniper, with this devil fruit, he would have the possibility of becoming the vice president, admiral, or even the 4 emperors. Thinking of this, Ron looked at worker Usopp. Have you ever thought about giving up sniping? This devil fruit is Paramecia munch fruit. Although others may think it is a bit useless, I also know that it is the top Paramecia devil fruit. After eating it, you will have the possibility to be as good as everyone else in the future. But if you want to develop munch fruit, you need to focus on close combat instead of sniping. You. Gouda. Hearing this, Luffy and others on the side swallowed their saliva. Top quality Paramecia devil fruit. Is this munch fruit so powerful? Why didn't Wobble see this happening before? But they also recognized Ron's words very much. Under such circumstances, they looked at the fruit with extremely hot eyes. No, however, at this moment, Usopp quickly suppressed his inner restlessness and said, although some expectations are true, I still like sniping, and I will not give up myself to become the king of sniping just for a devil fruit. Dream. Good. Hearing this, Ron nodded. He had already thought of this possibility before, and Usopp couldn't be a man who would be moved by just a devil fruit. Thinking of this, Ron said, in that case, let's keep it. Put it in the ship. If others join us, you can eat it to increase their strength if they need it. As soon as these words came out, they immediately aroused Usopp's approval. Indeed, the only ones not eating devil fruit right now are him, Zoro, and Sanji. However, Zoro is a swordsman and cannot eat the devil fruit, and Sanji is a close combatant, but he has said before that his hope is Paramecia, the invisibility fruit, and he should not care about the existence of this thing. Thinking of this, Usopp handed the devil fruit to Ron and said, in that case, then. Just leave this devil fruit with you, Ron. You are the strongest and can protect it. No problem. Nodding, Ron thought and took out the light lion fruit and said, this is the devil fruit of Miss Valentine that we met before, the light lion fruit. After eating it, it can make oneself as light as a feather, and it can also change one's own history. Although on the surface it seems to be only targeting itself, once it awakens, it will be able to affect surrounding things, and by then it will be able to do something similar to lion fruit. In this way, once the object is touched by it, it can increase its gravity and even float directly. The former Golden Lion relied on lion fruit to become the leading pirate, and even almost defeated the team of the previous pirate king Roger. This light lion fruit is the lower lion fruit of Golden Lion. It may not be that powerful, but it should not be underestimated. If any of you want it, just ask directly. Gouda hearing this, Luffy and others swallowed again. Not for anything else, because according to Ron's description, this light lion fruit may not be very powerful in the early stage, but it is also extremely powerful in the later stage. Especially the information he tells. The owner of the lion fruit, the superior fruit of the light lion fruit, actually almost defeated the Pirate King's team, which shows how terrifying it is. Ron, subconsciously, Luffy asked, what is awakening? Is the big pirate who almost defeated the Pirate King very powerful? As soon as these words came out, Ron and others rolled their eyes. How could the being who almost defeated the Pirate King's team be weak? However, the Golden Lion of this period was indeed weak. After all, in the original work, it was defeated by Luffy, who only had school-level strength. But all this is also caused by the fact that the Golden Lion is old, even weak in strength, and cannot use haki, as well as the suppression of the Kokaku aura. Otherwise, the Golden Lion would never have been defeated by the Straw Hat Pirates or Luffy. Thinking of this, Ron said, the Golden Lion of the past was very powerful. He was not only a lion fruit-capable person, but also the owner of Conqueror's Haki. The most important thing is that he was also the owner of Conqueror's Haki. The world's greatest swordsman before Hawkeye followed the two-sword style. It is said that there are 2 supremely sharp swords in the hands of the Golden Lion, which are unmatched by swordsmen of that era. Chapter 80. Light and Fluttery Ability User. Usopp, Sanji's Choice. Gouda hearing this, Zoro swallowed. At this moment, his breathing was a little rapid. Not only was the Golden Lion a threat to the original Roger pirates, the most important thing was that the world's greatest swordsman of that era was actually the Golden Lion. This is the world's greatest swordsman who ate the devil fruit. How can he actually do such a thing? For a moment, his heart was extremely shaken, and he subconsciously said, is this true? Ron, how can someone who ate devil fruit become the world's greatest swordsman? I don't know either. Shrugging, Ron said calmly, I just got some information. I don't know exactly how the world's greatest swordsmen of that era were classified. But there is no doubt that even if he eats devil fruit, Golden Lion's swordsmanship is definitely the strongest of that era. Even swordsman masters like Roger, Rayleigh, and Whitebeard are not as good as him. As soon as these words came out, Zoro fell silent. Demon fruit power became the world's greatest swordsman. No matter what the situation is, there is no doubt that Kendo does not seem to have much to do with eating devil fruit or not, or even. In this case, it seems that she also has hope of competing for the world's greatest swordsman again. Suddenly, Zoro seemed to think of something. After his whole body was refreshed, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. Seeing this, Ron had no idea who Zoro was referring to. Tashigi. If you eat the powerful zone and the ancient devil fruit, you will indeed be able to change your own shortcomings and fully develop your swordsmanship talent, and you will indeed be strong by then. But soon, Ron came back to his senses and didn't pay too much attention to these things. Not for anything else, because this matter has no great role or value to him. After all, he is not a pure swordsman, and he has no intention of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. Ron, suddenly, Usopp's voice came from the side. Is that light lion fruit really so powerful? After eating it, can you really become so powerful in the later stage? Awakening, is it true that the Ministry of Education has planned such a big change in one fruit? As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others also looked at Ron. After all, they have seen the situation of light lion fruit before. That is to say, it floats, or even adds some gravity to itself to attack the opponent. It seems that there is really nothing outstanding about it. Certainly, on the contrary, Ron waved his hands disapprovingly and said, otherwise, why do you think it is the lower fruit of lion fruit? As one of Paramisha's top devil fruits, even its lower-ranked fruits are not comparable to ordinary devil fruits. It's just that as a low-level fruit, it naturally cannot be compared with the early stage of high-level fruits, and it is impossible that it is not worth much in the early stage. But if you can develop its ability and cover it on the bullets you shoot, then it doesn't matter whether it is the destructive power of the gravity force or the speed of covering the buoyancy force, it cannot be underestimated. What, Usopp, you want to eat it? Hearing this, Luffy and others on the side also looked at Usopp. After all, Ron said before that the most suitable person for Usopp is undoubtedly Zone, and it is best to be a Zone with enhanced eyesight. But if it is this light lion fruit, it is indeed quite good. Although its awakening may be difficult, there is no doubt that its ability will greatly increase its existence as a sniper. Usopp, you have to take good care of it. Usopp, you can only eat one devil fruit, you have to think clearly. Luffy, Sanji and Zoro all spoke. They did not approve or stop it. Whether to eat or not to eat, that is Usopp's own choice. As companions, what they need is not to influence each other's life and choices, but more importantly, to let them make their own choices. I made a decision. Under such circumstances, Usopp pondered for a while, then slowly raised his head and looked at Ron and said, I'll eat it. Although it is weaker in the early stage, it is extremely good for me to have the power of flying. Once I truly master flying, most people will be unable to do anything to me. After all, I am a sniper. And according to what Ron said, if I develop it for a period of time, I might be able to use it to enhance my bullets, and then my sniping skills will be stronger. Good. Upon hearing this, Ron knew that Usopp had made up his mind. Without stopping anything, he directly threw the light lion fruit in his hand to Usopp and said, in that case, then you can eat it. But this stuff doesn't taste good. Number 7. Without refusing, Usopp took the devil fruit. Without any hesitation, he just took a bite. In an instant, Usopp's face twisted. The devil fruit was so unpalatable that it really made him feel extremely sour. But he also knew that this thing must be swallowed, otherwise even if it was disabled, it would be impossible to gain power. Gouda swallowing it hard, Usopp closed his eyes for a while and then opened his eyes and said in surprise, that's great. I really mastered buoyancy. The gravity has not been developed yet, so it should require my follow-up development. But the emergence of this buoyancy is enough for me to fly, and even the consumption is extremely small. In my situation, there is no problem even if I can fly for a day. With that said, Usopp activated his ability. In an instant, it can be seen that his figure slowly floated up. After flying out of the dock, he turned back and forth directly in the area above the Mary. Fly. The ability to fly again. Seeing this situation, Luffy said with some envy. After all, he is made of rubber and does not have such flying ability. Don't worry, rubber fruit is not weak. If you develop it well yourself, you will definitely be able to fly in the future. Seeing this, Ron stepped forward and patted Luffy on the shoulder to comfort him. Of course, this is no joke. Because in the future, Luffy's fourth gear will indeed be able to fly. Although the time cannot last so long, it is indeed flying. As for awakening, once it turns into Nika form, flying will not be any problem for Luffy. I will definitely develop the ability to fly. Nodding heavily, Luffy spoke with deep understanding at this moment. Although I have learned moonwalk, it is not a long-term solution, and moonwalk is still very expensive. If you can master flying, you can almost overcome the weakness of seawater, and there is almost no possibility of falling into the sea and losing strength. After a long time, Usopp got tired of playing and fell from the air. As soon as he landed, Usopp was extremely excited and said, Ron, this devil fruit suits me so well. I can feel that after flying for a while, I am becoming more and more skilled in the development of devil fruit. Especially buoyancy, I can definitely further develop this thing to make myself faster. In addition, my strength has reached the level of a major. Having said this, Usopp raised his hand and waved it. Although he had just eaten the devil fruit, it was Paramisha after all, and its growth rate should not be underestimated. Most importantly, the power of Paramisha devil fruit taps into Usopp's own potential. Usopp in the original book is weak. That's because of neglect of exercise. 2 years later, after Usopp has improved his physical fitness, to be honest, he is not weak at all. Eating devil fruit now directly saves Usopp at least 2 years of time. Even if he has no combat experience, there is no doubt that Usopp is much stronger now. Major level. Great, congratulations Usopp. Hearing this, Luffy and Zoro on the side couldn't help but congratulate him. Even Ron didn't expect it. After looking at Usopp, he said immediately, it should be that your own talent has been unlocked. The increase in devil fruit cannot be so exaggerated, let alone paramecia, so the most likely thing is that the power of this devil fruit unlocks your own talents. Under such circumstances, Usopp, you can reach the school level. Even because of the talent unlocked, you will become stronger much faster in the future, even to the point where you are not inferior to Luffy and Zoro. Yeah? Upon hearing this, Usopp's eyes lit up. My own strength is not only given by the devil fruit, but also because of my own talent. This was a great affirmation for him, and even gave him great confidence in his future. For a moment, Usopp looked at Luffy, and then locked on Zoro, laughing loudly and saying, Zoro, I will definitely surpass you. Zero, please give me flowers. Good. Zoro was stunned at first. He didn't expect Usopp to say such words. But soon, a smile appeared on his face, and he looked at Usopp and said, you can't relax, otherwise the gap between us will only get wider and wider. Of course not. Grinning, Usopp was also confident at this moment. He looked at Zoro and said, come on, Zoro, let's practice. I already desperately want to become stronger. When I defeat you, then Luffy, and then Ron, I will be the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Usopp, you've gone too far. Hearing this, Zoro had no reaction, but Luffy beside him couldn't help it. There was actually someone peering at his captain's position with eager eyes. How could he accept this? And no matter Zoro, Usopp's talent and strength are not inferior to his own. The sense of urgency in his heart has become more and more huge. Not to mention the existence of Ron, the strongest person. Although Ron was not interested in the captain's position, Luffy was still eager to become stronger. Thinking of this, Luffy also yelled, I'll go exercise too. I won't lose to you. While talking, the three of them walked directly to the side, picked up the equipment on the ground and started exercising. They are really three living treasures. Seeing this, Ron smiled and shook his head, then turned around to see how Nami was doing. Ron. At this moment, Sanji from the side suddenly came forward. After coming to Ron's side, Sanji's expression was a little complicated, but he soon became decisive and said, then munch fruit, is it really strong? Is it really possible? Is it enough for someone to have the same potential as Admiral? There was a pause in his steps, and Ron looked at Sanji in surprise. He never expected that Sanji would actually want to eat devil fruit. And judging from this posture, he seems to have set his sights on munch fruit. You know, Sanji in the original book is not against the devil fruit, but he is only interested in the invisibility fruit. Now he actually wants munch fruit, which is simply unbelievable and even made Ron a little stunned. Good, however, he was shocked, but Ron didn't hide the fruit at this moment. He said bluntly, the original fragrance fruit can transform everything swallowed into its own power. This kind of power is special, and if it is developed to the point of awakening, it can completely swallow all things. Everything swallowed by you will turn into your own assistance. It's like my lightning. If I send lightning into your stomach to swallow it, then it is very likely that you will directly control the power of lightning. If the flame is swallowed by you, then you can also master the power of the flame, and swallow other things and turn it into your own strength. It's just that I am sure whether it is swallowing a kind of power and turning it into energy, or whether it is able to transform multiple abilities into its own abilities, but there is no doubt that when facing some opponents, you can indeed respond in the same way. The state of his body. If the opponent is demon fruit power, then you will probably be able to master his ability after swallowing it, so that you will not be afraid of the opponent's ability attacking you. Gouda hearing this, Sanji couldn't help it. If it is true as Ron said, then the potential of munch fruit is indeed terrifying. Although there are uncertain factors, all of this alone is enough to make people excited. Plus the stimulation from Usopp just now. You know, Ron, Luffy and Zoro on the ship are all at the school level now, and now Usopp has also reached the school level. Doesn't this mean that he is the only one who is still a lieutenant? As for Nami, because of Logia, even the school level can't do anything to him. Sanji suddenly became the weakest being among the Straw Hat Pirates. Thinking of this, Sanji said directly, I want to eat munch fruit, please, Ron. Good. Hearing this, Ron did not refuse. As soon as he thought about it, he took out the munch fruit, threw it to Sanji, and said, to be honest, I'm looking forward to it too. After all, Usopp activated his talent after eating devil fruit before. What about you? If you eat it, will it activate the bloodline factors in your body? Once it is really activated, your strength will surpass Luffy and others in one leap, and may even be as strong as me, BU fan. Chapter 81 The bloodline factor awakens and arrives at Drum Island. Yeah? Hearing this, Sanji's eyes also lit up. Beyond Luffy, Zoro et al. This is really exciting. Without hesitation, Sanji picked up the munch fruit and put it into his mouth without hesitation. Vomit. It tastes so bad. How can this thing be so unpalatable? This is the greatest ill will towards me as a chef. In an instant, Sanji's complaints resounded. As a chef, he has an extremely keen sense of taste. This also made him more sensitive to the taste of devil fruit, and he looked like he was hopeless at the moment. But even so, Sanji's changes are extremely huge. It can be clearly seen that the aura on his body is growing rapidly. Especially one of his eyebrows turned upside down at this moment. Obviously, this is the trend of the blood factor awakening in Sanji's body. But it was only half of it. The other half of the eyebrows had no change at all. It was obvious that the awakening was not thorough enough. But even so, Sanji's aura is getting stronger and stronger at this moment, directly entering the school level, and even increasing rapidly. Sanji's breath. What happened? How could Sanji become so strong all of a sudden? As the aura continued to increase, Luffy and the three people not far away also noticed it. For a moment, the three of them no longer cared about practicing, and quickly stepped forward to check. After all, Sanji's current aura is too strong. He is not at the level of a major at all. He has already reached the stage of a lieutenant colonel or even a colonel. And this is not over yet. His aura is still growing rapidly. 013. Ron, what's going on? For a moment, Luffy asked dryly. For no other reason than because he could clearly feel that Sanji's experience had surpassed his own. Even with second gear turned on, he didn't seem to be 100% sure that he could defeat the current Sanji. Yeah, what's going on with this perverted cook? Zoro also had a look of astonishment on his face. After all, he and Sanji didn't deal with each other before. It's not that they have a bad relationship, it's that they don't like each other. This time Sanji improved so much all of a sudden, which really made him a little shocked and unbelievable. Ron, did Sanji eat it too? On the contrary, Usopp asked thoughtfully at this moment. Yes. Nodding, Ron looked at Sanji with a solemn expression and said, Sanji did eat munch fruit. It's just that this is not just the power of munch fruit, but more importantly, Sanji's own special bloodline has been activated. Although it is only half activated, the increase for him is also extremely huge. I even suspect that after Sanji completely masters this power, he will be able to directly enter the general level. Even the weakest Commodore is incomparable to us. Gouda. Hearing this, Usopp swallowed, his eyes full of envy. Special bloodline. This guy Sanji actually has a special bloodline. It's so cool. You can become so much stronger all at once. This bloodline is so powerful. As soon as these words came out, they immediately aroused the recognition of Luffy and Zoro. Immediately afterwards, the two of them seemed to be stimulated, and without struggling or waiting, they turned around and walked aside to start practicing. After all, in their opinion, Sanji is now stronger than themselves. If you don't practice hard, you will be ridiculed by Sanji for a while. Especially Luffy. He seemed to see another obstacle on his way to establishing his authority as captain. In addition, the rising star Usopp is eyeing the position of captain. Luffy expressed that he was tired, and at the same time, the sense of urgency in his heart to become stronger became stronger. On the contrary, Usopp was not anxious about anything at the moment, but walked to Ron's side and sat down to wait for Sanji to wake up. About half an hour later, Sanji's closed eyes opened. The next second, the aura on his body surged, directly reaching the school level ultimate, that is, the level of a naval headquarters colonel. Although he has not yet reached the rank of general. But it can also be seen from Sanji's situation that he has just awakened the blood factor. Once he continues to develop it, it will not take long to reach the general level, and even reach the level close to the general star in the shortest time. After all, the blood factor in Sanji's body is very powerful. Sanji in the original work is only at Vice Admiral level, not too powerful. But after awakening the bloodline factor, his own strength suddenly reached the level of an Imperial deputy. Even if he was weaker than Admiral, he would not be much weaker. It can be seen from this that the bloodline factor in Sanji's body is very powerful, but it is just more difficult to awaken. My strength, my strength has improved a lot. So handsome, so handsome. Ron, you really didn't lie to me. I've really become a lot stronger. At this time, Sanji also noticed that his situation was different. For a moment, Sanji couldn't help but cheer. If nothing else, this situation is really embarrassing. From being the weakest member of the Straw Hat Pirates to becoming the #1 combat force, Sanji was extremely happy. Congratulations. Seeing this, Ron stepped forward to congratulate Sanji. Immediately afterwards, he pulled out the snow walkway from his waist. Come on, Sanji, let me help you test the force zone of the blood factor. After saying that, Ron slashed Sanji's arm with one blow before he could recover. Jung fire flew everywhere, and Sanji's sleeve was cut, but the power of the knife was blocked by his skin. Obviously, even if only half of the blood factor is awakened, the superhuman defense power is also awakened. Although it cannot reach the defense level of the full version that is not inferior to Andy's body, it is not something that ordinary weapons can easily break through. Wow. Is this all okay? Oh my god, Sanji, how come your defense is so strong? Seeing this situation, Usopp exclaimed. He quickly walked forward and circled around Sanji's arm, his eyes filled with disbelief. How come? Even Sanji was stunned at this moment and couldn't believe what was happening. After all, he couldn't believe that all of this could be true. His defense was so terrifying, he didn't even mean to defend himself just now. Not bad. At this time, Ron praised. Sanji, it seems that the power of your blood factor has really turned on. Although it is only half activated, as you continue to develop, your own physique will be even more terrifying, even surpassing that of your brothers and sisters. In addition, you have eaten munch fruit. If you are training your body and practicing your kicking skills, I am sure that even the Marine Admiral will not be able to do anything to you in the future. Hearing this, Sanji smiled. He knew what Ron meant, which was to prevent himself from becoming distracted and not practicing after gaining strength. But how is such a thing possible? Although he has cheated and become stronger now, he is not completely his own. He also needs to be familiar with mastering such power, and with the existence of people like Ron. If Sanji dares to slack off, I'm afraid it won't be long before they catch up with him or even surpass him. Thinking of this, Sanji suddenly said, "Don't worry, I won't relax. I will even work harder to become stronger, not only to protect everyone, but also to go back and tell those pretentious guys that I, Shan Hao, am the strongest." Speaking of this, Sanji's eyes were filled with determination. The father and brother of the Vinsmoke family are full of strong resentment. The only person in the entire family who can make him care and remember a little bit is his sister. Seeing this, Ron also laughed, walked up and patted Sanji on the shoulder and said, "We will accompany you when the time comes to let them know that you are the strongest." Time flies, in the blink of an eye, the next day comes in the evening. Ron and others also successfully arrived at the Drum Kingdom in the Merry. Looking around, you can clearly see that there are many residents gathering together in the shore area at this moment, each raising their muskets and aiming at the Merry, Ron and others. "Outsiders, you are not welcome here, please leave here. Pirates, leave quickly, we don't welcome pirates like you." As the Merry approached, the people on the shore started shouting. The hatred in their eyes could not be concealed, and it was obvious that they had no favorable impressions of pirates. Seeing this, Luffy and others, who were walking out with Nami on their backs, looked ugly. After all, Nami's condition is extremely bad now. If she doesn't enter the island to find a doctor, Nami's condition will definitely be extremely dangerous. Everyone, but being angry, Ron still remained rational. He knew why these guys were so hostile to pirates. The Drum Kingdom was previously brought into chaos by Wapol and others, and countless people died. Thinking of this, Ron stepped forward and said, "We don't have any ill intentions towards you. We are here to seek medical treatment. Our companion is sick and is in extreme danger now. She urgently needs a doctor to treat her. Please allow us to go in and treat her, or ask a doctor to come and treat her. As long as my companion's illness is cured, how about we just leave this place and never set foot here again?" As soon as these words came out, Luffy and others looked expectantly at the people on the shore. After all, they don't really want to take action unless they have to. The most important thing is that this matter is essentially to save Nami, and they don't want to delay here. No, impossible. A pirate's partner is a pirate, and we will never treat a pirate. Yes, pirates all deserve to die, all of them deserve to die. It would be best if she died of illness. However, the people on the shore did not buy it at this moment. While everyone was shouting, they did not hide their hostility, and even wished Nami would die of illness like this. You. Hearing this, Luffy and others' expressions immediately turned ugly. These guys cursed Nami to die, which is definitely something they are not willing to accept and see. For a moment, their eyes were filled with anger, and they were even ready to take action. You guys really deserve to die. Even Ron was furious at this moment. Although he knew that there was a reason for what these guys did, Ron couldn't hide the murderous intention in his heart after listening to their words. Because he was persecuted by Wapol and others for his own incompetence, it is now acceptable to be hostile to pirates. But they have no grudges against this group of people. They treat her like this just because of her identity as a pirate. They even treat the patient Nami as if she wishes she would die. This is the real stupidity. Taking one step forward, Ron was so angry that he pulled out Shui Zhou from his waist and was about to take action. Suddenly, a special force swept out of Ron's body and directly impacted the area on the shore. Thump thump, in an instant, a resident named Xiao fell into a coma. In just a few breaths, the people on the shore were completely unconscious. Seeing this situation, Luffy and others who were about to move behind were all stunned. They subconsciously looked at where Ron was, their eyes full of astonishment, confusion. Conquerors. Ron, on the other hand, was extremely excited at the moment after being in a daze for a while. 0.9 Conquerors, he actually has Conquerors too. And it was really unexpected that Conquerors was awakened under such circumstances. But soon, Ron calmed down. The so-called Conquerors are a group of existences that are awakened only by those who are unwilling to fall and want to dominate. I don't know if he had such a talent before, but from the moment he made up his mind to become the king of the world, he should indeed have such a talent. Thinking of this, the corner of Ron's mouth raised and he said, "Usopp, drive the melee and wait for us in the outer sea area. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji and I took Nami to the doctor for treatment." Good. Hearing this, Usopp nodded. He knew the hostility of the residents towards them, and it was impossible for Meridu to dock here. Therefore, stopping in the offshore area is the best choice, and Ron and others enter it to find a doctor to treat Nami, which is also the best choice. After all, with their current strength, it is impossible for anyone to threaten them on the island. Let's go, soon. The Mary began to retreat. Ron stepped forward, picked up Nami, and directly used Moonwalk to fly towards the island. Seeing this, Luffy, Zoro and Sanji also followed closely behind. Soon, a few of them entered the island. Not paying attention to the unconscious people, they entered the island directly. After making some inquiries, Ron and the others flew directly towards the top of the mountain where Chopper lived. Ron, what was your previous method? The rapid form was in the snow, and Luffy asked curiously at this moment. Why did the people on the shore faint all of a sudden?